Chapter 74. The experts, who had already rushed to the vicinity of the camp, under the old man, Lei Bao's shout, could only leave unwillingly. They were all experts with considerable strength and could temporarily resist the Black Gale's attack, but they understood that if the old man Lei Bao were to attack, they would not be able to resist. Suddenly, the Black Gale gradually thinned out. Just as everyone heaved a sigh of relief, streaks of greenish-white lightning appeared in the gale. In an instant, dozens of cultivators were struck until their bodies trembled and were swept into the gale. They were like fallen leaves in the autumn wind, fluttering in the air. Lei Xingfeng suddenly felt a large amount of lightning energy in the air. The energy made his heart palpitate. One must know that he was a lightning cultivator and was naturally immune to lightning damage. He could even absorb lightning energy from outside. Even so, he felt a great threat, let alone other practitioners. Thunderstorm's expression was a little strange. He also felt the lightning energy, but this lightning energy made him feel very strange. He could clearly feel that this energy was of a higher level than the Yin Li he controlled. This was something he had never felt before. If it weren't for the current situation, he really wanted to sit down and cultivate. He wanted to absorb the lightning here and see what changes would happen. Suddenly, countless lightning bolts struck towards Elder Thunderstorm's Lei Yin. One after another, dozens of lightning bolts struck Lei Yin. Because Lei Yin was hanging above the camp, the whole camp was brightly lit. It was as if Lei Yin had replaced the light of the sun. Lei Bao was very nervous. Soon, he realized that something was wrong because he noticed that the lightning stamp was changing rapidly. For the time being, he didn't know if this change was good or bad, but he knew that the lightning stamp he condensed was different. Fortunately, the lightning stamp was still under his control. He couldn't care less about it because he was busy. At worst, he could just condense a new lightning stamp. Ever since he learned how to absorb a large amount of heavenly lightning from a thunderstorm, condensing a lightning stamp wasn't a difficult thing. Therefore, Thunderstorm didn't put away Lei Yin. Instead, he commanded Lei Yin to absorb a large amount of lightning. Lei Xingfeng was also quietly absorbing lightning. However, the amount he absorbed was very small because this wasn't a place to cultivate. He could only rely on his Lei Lunli to absorb some of the lightning. As a result, Jean Depang and Yen, who were holding hands with him, were miserable. They felt their arms go numb and their hair stood up uncontrollably. Jean Depang and Yen didn't dare to let go. They could only tremble and say, "Afong, what are you doing?" Yen also said, My mom." Lei Xingfeng asked, curiously, "Your mom?" Yen was stunned. "My mom." Xi and Feng asked, "And what happened to your mother?" Yen almost went crazy. If they weren't familiar with each other, she would have punched this guy. She rolled her eyes and said, "You numb my mom." Because of the lightning teleportation, Yen and Jean Depang weren't immune to lightning. Therefore, Yen couldn't speak clearly. It was no wonder that Lei Xingfeng heard wrongly. He said, "I didn't scold you." Yen was so angry that she bumped into Lei Xingfeng. She said angrily, "Let go." At this time, she couldn't care less. That numb feeling was driving her crazy. Bang! Yan's head bumped into Lei Xingfeng's shoulder. Caught off guard, Lei Xingfeng let go and said, "What's wrong with you?" Jean Depang reacted and couldn't help but laugh. She said, numb. "Little Yen, am I right?" Yen nodded fiercely and said, "A Feng is deaf. It's so messed up. It's so infuriating." Tai Lang said in a low voice, "You two, hold hands. You're still bickering at this time." Lei Xingfeng obediently stretched out his hand and said, "Don't worry, I won't numb you." He retracted his thunder Lunli. Although he continued to absorb lightning, he was careful not to make his companion feel uncomfortable. Lightning killed people faster, more ferocious, and more cruel. When lightning struck people, they were basically reduced to ashes. Even dregs were rarely left behind. Wherever the wind passed, there was basically nothing left. One cultivator after another died. Even those enlightened masters took out their trump cards and madly defended. No one dared to be careless. Those who were careless all died. Yen was usually quiet, but after getting familiar with her, she wasn't so cold anymore. She muttered, so infuriating. She reached out to hold Lei Xingfeng's hand. She was still a little unhappy. At this time, the practitioners who were dodging nearby couldn't hold on any longer. Even sages couldn't withstand such dense lightning. They started to run outside. If this continued, they would really die. The lightning disappeared very suddenly. A second ago, it was still lightning and thunder. The next second, it was silent. Along with the lightning and thunder, the black gale also disappeared suddenly. Elder Thunderstorm and Gulu shouted at the same time, "Focus! Be careful!" The black hole in the sky expanded to a few thousand meters. However, it was no longer spewing out wind. Instead, countless thin threads floated out. Those black threads were like floating cotton. They fell down in clumps. No one knew what they were. However, Thunderstorm and Gulu acted as if they were facing a great enemy. Both of them kept their seals at the same time. Thunderstorm grabbed Lei Xingfeng and shouted, "Everyone dodge! Don't let that thing touch you." The whole defense circle collapsed. Thunderstorm grabbed Lei Xingfeng and kept dodging. This time, even though they were in the best position, some of the black threads still fell down. However, they had a certain amount of space warp. Fortunately, the speed of the threads wasn't fast. As long as they were careful enough, they could still dodge from this position. Lei Xingfeng didn't understand and asked, Yi, can't this thing be blocked?" Thunderstorm said, "It can't be blocked. Whoever tries to block, it will die." Lei Xingfeng said, "What is this? Yi, how do you know?" Thunderstorm grabbed Lei Xingfeng and had already dodged a few clumps of threads. He said, "I don't know what it is either. However, my intuition tells me that this thing can't be blocked." Other than the camp they were in, the other places were filled with threads. There were still a few hundred people who survived the black gale and lightning. As the sand dunes were all flattened, Lei Xingfeng and the rest could clearly see these people desperately trying to escape. They could also see the threads falling bit by bit. Suddenly, a Wan Luan Shi from Stellar Night Fortress let out a scream. While he was dodging, he bumped into a clump of threads. Without a sound, a large piece of his body disappeared. Seeing that he was paralyzed on the ground and blood was quickly flowing out, Tai Long angrily shouted, "Everyone dodge carefully. Whoever is F*King careless will F*King die." Everyone was trying their best to dodge. Hong Chen also grabbed Yen and dodged. Only Jin De Pang didn't have any elders. He could only rely on himself to dodge. His fat face was filled with fear and sweat. He dodged left and right. His mouth was even mumbling something. No one noticed him. The camp was already in a mess. Everyone was struggling for their lives. No one dared to slack off. The people far away ran with all their might. However, the ground here was made of sand. If they were not careful, their legs would get stuck. Wanting to run quickly was extremely difficult. Those clumps of threads were already close to the ground, right above the heads of the people running. Screams came one after another. Some people didn't even have time to scream before they were killed by those weird threads. In less than a minute, the people running on the ground were only left with a few people. They were almost sticking to the ground. Using all four limbs like wild dogs, they ran out. But even so, they couldn't run out of the ground that was covered by the hidden Luan space. They died one after another. As for the people in Stellar Night Fortress, 7 or 8 people died. There were a few who were injured, including Jean DePang. One of his arms brushed against a clump of threads, and a large piece of flesh disappeared. After about 5 minutes, the falling ball of filaments finally disappeared. The surroundings were silent. Other than the people in Tai Lang's camp, everyone who entered this area were all dead. Those who were not in the best position had no way to survive. Yen Wu laughed bitterly. If those people knew that they would definitely die if they stayed outside, they would probably attack our camp with all their might. Gulu said faintly, "This opportunity was gone after Brother Lei Bao made his move." Tai Long laughed bitterly. He could hear Gulu's dissatisfaction towards him. However, he couldn't explain it. He sighed lightly. Delan and the Scorpion Alliance's team were wiped out. Instead, they saved Ai Shibo's life. He should have returned to the Scorpion Alliance to ask for help. Old Man Thunderstorm said nonchalantly, "It's nothing much. At most, we'll just fight with the Scorpion Alliance. I don't believe that they would dare to offend a lone ghost like me." A lone high-level true master was the most threatening person. No powerhouse was willing to offend such a person. When they wanted to take revenge, they would definitely do anything. Tai Long laughed bitterly. He muttered in his heart, "You're a lone traveler. I have a family to feed. Unless I'm like you, then I'll definitely be crazier than you." Old Man Thunderstorm put down Lei Xingfeng and looked up. He didn't say anything for a while, but his expression gradually became serious. Gulu also looked up and said, "God, what kind of hidden Luin space is this? It actually has so many defenses. This person should be a super expert in the ancient era, right?" Old Man Thunderstorm said softly, "Gulu, don't talk too much. They still don't understand. This time, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse." Lei Xingfeng heard everything clearly. He didn't dare to ask, but he had a guess in his heart. This ancient hidden Luin space might be an incredible treasure. Even Thunderstorm didn't guess it correctly. That was why he brought him here. He only treated it as a treasure hunt or training. Rather than a treasure hunt, it was more of a training for him. However, from the looks of it, this hidden Luin space was something incredible. If it was an extremely rare hidden Luin space, then their serious expressions would be explained. Even if they obtained this treasure, to them, it would be a huge problem, because this would attract those top-level or legendary characters. Chapter 75. Even with the old man Lei Bao's experience and knowledge, he was unable to deduce what era this Luin Chang space was from. Nor could he deduce what kind of expert left behind this plaything. The only thing everyone was sure of was that this Luin Chang space was definitely not ordinary. Gulu whispered, "This is really surprising. Who knows what the consequences will be?" The stronger one was, the more they knew, and the more worried they would be. Old Man Thunderstorm also whispered, "Don't worry about that. Since we're here, we won't give up." Gulu suddenly laughed. "Since we're all alone, once we get the benefits, we'll just run away. This world is so big, who would bother us?" Xian Feng had always stayed by Lei Bao's side. The two of them didn't hide their conversation from him, causing him to tremble in fear. This was the first time he had seen such a terrifying treasure fight if they didn't occupy their current position. Adding on to the fact that they had dealt with the situation properly, only Lei Bao and Gulu would be able to survive. The rest would probably be dead. Looking at the situation outside, over 1,000 people had all died. Not a single one had escaped. Even if they occupied the best position, many people still died. This hidden Luin space was too perverse. The black tumbling in the sky, who knew what it was? Suddenly, Old Man Thunderstorm grabbed Lei Xingfeng, and the sky seemed to be collapsing. Everything turned black, and a thunderous sound could be heard. The hidden Luin space had finally descended. Old Man Thunderstorm's body flashed with lightning. Lei Xingfeng only felt himself tumbling. He was grabbed tightly by Old Man Thunderstorm. The surroundings were pitch black. He couldn't see anything. The only thing he could see was the lightning on Old Man Thunderstorm's body. It was as if he stepped on air, his whole body falling quickly. He couldn't hear anything around him, as if the loud sound just now caused his ears to stop working. He didn't know how long had passed. Maybe it was a moment, maybe it was a day, but in any case, Lei Xingfeng had completely lost track of time. Old Man Thunderstorm was very calm. He grabbed Lei Xingfeng tightly and whispered, "What the hell, what kind of hidden Luan space is this?" Even though Old Man Thunderstorm was very close to him, his voice seemed to come from far away. Lei Xingfeng said, "Ai, where are we?" He was shocked by his own voice. It was muffled, as if there was an echo. It was extremely strange. Old Man Thunderstorm said, "I don't know where this place is, and the only thing I'm sure is that we've entered this hidden Luan space." Lei Xingfeng said, "But I can't see anything." The old man Lei Bao said, "Be patient. Feng, hold on tight to me." Lei Xingfeng's back was Thunderstorm was Luan. Thunderstorm storm was Lei Xingfeng was Luan was Thunderstorm was Luan. Thunderstorm was Thunderstorm. Was Luan of Thunderstorm? The two of them seemed to be floating in water. A phrase appeared in Lei Xingfeng's mind, going with the flow. He felt like he was going with the flow, floating all the way down. God knows where he would float to. This strange feeling made him go crazy. Luckily, he was with Old Man Thunderstorm. The two of them could still talk. This made him feel less scared. This experience completely broke his previous knowledge. It was a very strange experience. When Thunderstorm and the rest were sucked into the hidden Luan space, the 1,000-sand barrier underwent a shocking change. Between heaven and earth, a huge gust of wind blew, countless sand flew up, and was absorbed by an invisible force. A large group of people was 100 miles away from the 1,000-sand barrier, quietly watching the changes. The three of them stood on a sand dune. Behind them was a large group of practitioners. An extremely handsome young man smiled as he looked at the sandstorm. He said, "I didn't expect there to be an ancient hidden Luan space. What good luck? Dayton, your contribution is not small. Hee, don't worry. I won't mistreat you." An old man with a face full of wrinkles smiled. "Senior, I'm just reporting to you. I'm afraid this is just a normal hidden Luan space." Another middle-aged man said, "See, Dunno, we're still late. If we found a good spot, we would have already entered." Si Danua said, "It's nothing, even if we're late. Who can take it away in front of us?" Sun Buru, we're already very lucky to be able to come. If we were half a year or a year later, we wouldn't have gotten anything. This is all thanks to Dayton. Dayton smiled. "Senior Sun, I just asked around. There's a guy who knows a bit. I got people to bring him here. You can ask him." Sun Buru said, "Okay, bring him here." Dayton waved his arm. Two people immediately dragged a middle-aged man over. This person was Ai Shibo, who was heavily injured by the old man Lei Bao. He was actually being dragged over like a dead dog. He looked at the three people in front of him in despair. The old man with a face full of wrinkles was the one who captured him. He had no ability to resist at all. Due to his injuries, he was unable to display his abilities and was easily captured. Dayton waved his hand. "Throw him over." Ai Shibo was thrown in front of the three. Dayton said, "Senior Sun, I've brought him over. This guy should be a true treasure Luanine master. He's an incredible expert in Shi Rong land. He's someone who condensed 5 true ring bodies." Actually, he didn't think it would be so easy to capture a 5 true ring body expert. He was quite pleased. Sun Buru nodded. "Okay, 5 true ring bodies, not bad." Si Na Nua smiled. He clasped his hands behind his back. He didn't speak, only watching the show with interest. Ai Shibo's face turned green. A true master actually had such a flattering expression. It was obvious what kind of status the two people in front of him had. Beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. He howled in his heart. How could he be so unlucky this time, meeting Lei Bao first and being beaten to the point of pissing his pants? After escaping with great difficulty, he was caught halfway and beaten to a pulp. Sun Buru said, "Okay, you seem to have been injured. It seems like you were injured by a lightning-type cultivator. Tell me, what did you see inside? Maybe if I'm in a good mood, I'll spare your life." E. Dayton's face changed. Of course, he knew why he defeated the opponent. He didn't expect Sun Buru to see through it. He forced a smile and acted as if he didn't care. He didn't dare to be dissatisfied with Sun Buru. Even if he exposed his flaunting, he could only act dumb, but with his vengeful personality, Ai Shibo would be in trouble in the future. Ai Shibo said, I'm the great elder of the Scorpion Alliance." E. Dayton kicked him fiercely, saying indifferently, "What damn alliance? Don't F***king show it. Answer Senior's question." Ai Shibo's heart was filled with despair. The opponent didn't even care about his power. He said miserably, Yes, Sun Buru asked kindly, "What's your name? What did you see before? What kind of powerful people were there? Okay, right, who injured you?" Ai Shibo said, "Honestly, I'm called Ai Shibo. I saw a lot of people inside. As for the powerful people, okay, there was Tai Long and an old man. I was injured by him, right? I asked around. That old man's name is Thunderstorm. I couldn't tell how strong he was. He only used one move to injure me." E. Dayton was shocked. What did you say? Thunderstorm." Ai Shibo said, "Yes, I asked around. I heard he's very powerful, a lightning-type expert." E. Dayton said, "What does he look like?" Ai Shibo gave a simple description of Thunderstorm's appearance. E. Dayton started to grit his teeth. C. Dano smiled. "Dayton, you know that Thunderstorm?" E. Dayton said hatefully, "Of course I know him. 60 years ago, I was injured by him. I almost lost my life. My hatred for him is as deep as the ocean. But this guy disappeared for a few decades. I couldn't find any traces of him. I didn't expect him to appear again." Sun Buru said, Hee, I think you won't be able to take revenge. With my experience, this time when the hidden Luan space descends, it will cause a reaction that they won't be able to withstand. They might even die inside if they don't die. That means he's much stronger than you. It will be difficult for you to take revenge." Ai Shibo didn't know if he should be happy or afraid. Delon was killed. He was heavily injured. Towards Thunderstorm, his hatred wasn't bad, but E. Dayton wasn't his friend, and he could see that this E. Dayton didn't have a good temper. Whether he could live or not was still uncertain. He couldn't be happy. E. Dayton was extremely unhappy with Sun Buru's words, but he didn't dare to be disrespectful. He could only suppress the anger in his heart and said, "Maybe I'm not as strong as him, but Senior should be much stronger than him." He immediately thought of borrowing a knife to kill. Sun Buru smiled and said, "Ai Shibo, why did you have a conflict with Thunderstorm?" Ai Shibo said weakly, "They occupied the best location. So, see, Dano couldn't help but laugh. So that's the case. If you want to snatch other people's location, you need to have sufficient strength, the result of overestimating yourself. You'll become a pile of dog shit." Ai Shibo was speechless. Being mocked and ridiculed by others made him extremely depressed. Dano continued, "From the looks of it, only Thunderstorm and his group can enter the hidden Luan space. A pity we can't enter at the moment." Thunder rumbled from afar. The ground was trembling. Sun Buru said, "Thousand Sand Barrier should completely disappear. Who knows how big this hidden Luan space is? I'm guessing the entire Thousand Sand Barrier being sucked in shouldn't be a big problem. It might even affect us." Dano said, "Even if it affects us, it won't be serious. At most, it'll just be the aftermath." He said casually, "Boom." Chapter 76. Before Ano finished his words, a large area of the ground caved in. This guy and Sun Buru suddenly flew into the air. E. Dayton's reaction was slightly slower, but he also flew up, while Ai Shibo, due to his heavy injuries, couldn't run at all and instantly fell down. He let out a cry of shock, then went silent. Nobody knew if he was dead or unconscious, but that wasn't important. The important thing was that the entire ground caved in. The ground had caved in at least 100 meters. Screams filled the air. Siano and Sunburu's expressions became ugly and awkward, especially Siano. He was a bit angry. His group of subordinates desperately tried to escape. The three of them had no choice but to become a rescue team. Fortunately, the collapse did not extend too far. Adding on the fact that they were all cultivators, although many of them were buried underground, they used their own abilities to dig their way out. The only unexpected thing was that AI Shabo was nowhere to be found. Even E. Dayton lost a few of his subordinates. They were all Wan Luan Shur and Mill Wheel masters. None of the true masters were lost. Only a few true masters with 1 or 2 true ring bodies were injured. After all, the strength of a true master wasn't something Wan Luan Shur and Mill Wheel masters could compare to. Siano and Sunburu brought a group of people and retreated. Even with their strength, they didn't dare to barge in. They already knew that this hidden Luan space was definitely not ordinary. They began to mercilessly kill and chase away the practitioners that came from the outside. They had already decided not to let other powers in. As for those who entered before them, when they had the chance, they would also be killed, unless they were stronger than Siano and Sunburu. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to escape death. Thunderstorm and Lei Xingfeng were still floating in the dark space. At this time, a huge force pushed them forward, and their speed was getting faster and faster. Lei Xingfeng tightly hugged Thunderstorm's neck, his 2 legs wrapped around the old man's waist. Old Man Thunderstorm let out Lei Yin and fixed Lei Yin under his feet. A thin layer of lightning protected the 2 of them. The 2 of them shot forward like arrows. There was a rumbling sound behind them, but they didn't know what it was. The old man, Lei Bao, instinctively felt that something was wrong. He immediately activated his lightning stamp and rushed forward. He did not know what was behind him and what was in front of him, but he did not want to fall behind, as he instinctively knew that there was danger behind him. An Almighty's hidden Luan space would be very large. An enlightened master's hidden Luan space was called a small hidden Luan space. This type of hidden Luan space was relatively precious. However, this hidden Luan space in front of him was obviously not a small hidden Luan space. This hidden Luan space in front of him had this feeling. It was very similar to a hidden star Luan. However, Old Man Thunderstorm couldn't be sure because he had never seen a hidden Great Luan or a hidden star Luan before. Lei Xingfeng didn't understand at all. He didn't need to understand what a hidden Great Luan or a hidden star Luan was. He just needed to find a way to enter and collect the things inside. If he was lucky, he might be able to find some rare ancient items. Thunderstorm was very excited. He knew that once he successfully entered the hidden Luan space, the rewards this time would definitely not be bad. If he found some useful abilities or items, he might even be able to level up. This time, he relied on the power of natural lightning to level up. However, how to improve in the future was right in front of him. Now that there was a good chance, he couldn't let it go easily. Lei Xingfeng looked back. It was dark here. They could only rely on the faint silver light emitted by thunderstorms, Lei Yin to barely see their surroundings. However, there was nothing on their flight path. Lei Xingfeng felt that there was something behind them, but he couldn't see clearly. He said, Yi, there seems to be something coming from behind. It's very fast. Thunderstorm said, I know. He frantically flew forward. Luckily, he could fly. If he couldn't fly and just floated forward, he believed that the thing behind them would have caught up. Suddenly, light flashed in front of Lei Bao and Xian Feng. In an instant, countless stars appeared in front of them. Those were the items stored in the hidden Luan space. As dense as the night sky, Lei Bao spoke in shock. This is the fucking hidden star Luan. This is a fucking hidden star Luan. Ha! A phone. We're rich. Lei Xingfeng didn't know that one person could collect so many things. At a glance, it was densely packed with all kinds of items. How do we collect them? Lei Xingfeng knew that his hidden Luin space was very small. At most, it was 100 or so cubic meters of space. That was only expanded after he became a mill wheel master. Thunderstorm said, "Let's not worry about that. We'll collect as much as we can." Lei Xingfeng was dazzled. He didn't know what to collect. Thunderstorm reminded him, "Find something special. Don't take anything you've seen before. Find something you haven't seen before, especially the star python skin that can be recorded. Also, special tools. Oh, right, and medicine. Don't let them go." The two of them started collecting crazily. Lei Xingfeng realized that he couldn't move in the hidden Luin space. He could only rely on Thunderstorm's back. Thus, he took out a rope and tied it to Thunderstorm's waist. He relied on the rope and pounced towards the things he was interested in. Once he got them, he would pull the rope back. Thunderstorm's eyes were different. He brought Lei Xingfeng and flew towards those rare items. No one else had entered the hidden Luin space yet. Only the two of them were running around. In just a few minutes, because Thunderstorm's hidden Luin space was very big, he collected everything without any restraint. Large amounts of items were collected into his hidden Luin space. Lei Xingfeng could only choose. In a few minutes, he collected tens of items. He didn't even have time to see what they were. As long as he felt that he wanted something, he would immediately collect it. Lei Xingfeng suddenly pointed not far away and said, "Yi, over there." He had an observation mission and needed to remind Thunderstorm. This was the work of the two of them. Thunderstorm looked over and immediately flew over without hesitation. At the same time, he praised, "Good, a phone." There were 7 to 8 items floating in the air. Lei Xingfeng's eyes were indeed good. He saw a scroll. The color was very similar to the skin of a star python. This was what Thunderstorm was most concerned about. With his knowledge, the stronger Thunderstorm was, the more benefits he could get. Thus, he knew that he had to find what Thunderstorm needed and not what he needed. Only now did he calm down. The shock when he first entered was too great. He couldn't focus on searching. Thunderstorm kept the 2 pieces of star python's skin into his hidden Luin space. He didn't collect the other items and said, "A phone you collect." Lei Xingfeng immediately collected them. Since the items weren't big, they were suitable for him to collect. Suddenly, Thunderstorm raised his head and said, "They're here." Lei Xingfeng saw a few silhouettes suddenly appear in the distance. What happened next made him stunned. Countless sand and stones spewed out, forming a sandstorm that quickly spread out. Thunderstorm immediately flew away. He didn't want to be buried by the sand and stones. Because of the rope, Lei Xingfeng also flew away with the old man. Lei Xingfeng didn't choose anymore. He focused on the small items that were less than a few feet in size. As for the large items, he didn't care at all because they weren't something he could collect. Suddenly, he saw a bone that was 4 feet long. It was a silver-white bone that was as thick as a calf. The bone was very strange, and there were actually electric arcs flashing on it. He suddenly pushed Lei Bao, and his body bounced back. He pounced in front of the bone and grabbed it. Thunderstorm looked back and couldn't help but shout, "Good! That's the bone of a star thunder beast." "Ha ha, a phone. Your luck is really good." "Ha ha." Star thunder beast? Lei Xingfeng thought for a moment and remembered the records on the star python records. It was a powerful star beast that had long gone extinct. Like the star python, it was an extremely powerful star beast from ancient times. It was a beast of legends. It was an innate lightning-controlling beast. It was said that the bone of this star thunder beast was one of the best materials to make lightning-type weapons. It was born with lightning. He actually found one here. Lei Xingfeng looked back. The sand and stones formed a sand curtain, and the silhouettes that originally appeared were also swallowed by the sand curtain. Why is there so much sand? Thunderstorm said, "It's normal. If it's on the sea, then you'll see a lot of seawater rushing in. If it's in a place like Tiger Cliff Castle, then mountains and trees will also appear. Of course, they will be torn to pieces before they can enter." Lei Xingfeng exclaimed, "What is this?" Thunderstorm said, "Right now we can't feel the gravity. When the sand and stones settle down, you'll see the ground appear. Then the hidden Luan space will completely collapse and appear on top of the Thousand Sand Barrier. At that time, all the stored items will appear. Once the hidden Luan space appears, it means that everything will explode out. Many of them will be hidden under the sand, and many will fall on the sand. At that time, it will be the real beginning of a bloody storm. This period of time could be 3 days, or it could be a few months. During this period of time, it would be the reward for those who entered first. They would be able to obtain the earliest batch of treasures. Of course, the prerequisite was that they could protect it. The practitioners of this world all have a Luan Chang space, and the characteristic of the Luan Chang space is that it will disappear with the death of its owner and will not appear immediately. Thus, robbing it is impossible unless you have a way to torture the owner of the treasure. Just relying on killing people to obtain the treasure is absolutely impossible. Lei Bao and Xian Feng stared at another item that was emitting a dim light. Chapter 77. Tai Long was extremely sullen. Ever since he was sucked in, he had been floating. He was, after all, an expert, with 5 true ring bodies, but he was only slightly stronger than others here, but he definitely wasn't as free as Lei Bao. Until the violent sand swept over, he was pushed into the hidden Luan space, and was instantly buried in the sandstorm. Since the sand hadn't settled yet, it was hard for him to borrow strength and move freely. However, he still managed to find a few items, but he couldn't take any of the countless items. This made him extremely uncomfortable. The others were in the same situation. They were all tossed around in the sandstorm, unable to control themselves. The lucky ones were able to get a few items. The unlucky ones didn't even get anything. Among them, Jean Depang was the most pitiful. After he entered the hidden Luan space, the first thing he saw was a dozen items 100 meters away. Before he could even feel happy, he was completely swallowed by the sandstorm. His vision was a mess, and he didn't even know where he was floating to. Thunderstorm and Lei Xingfeng found an item that was glowing. Thunderstorm flew over with Lei Xingfeng. They were already at the edge of the sandstorm. When Thunderstorm flew past the glowing item, Lei Xingfeng left Thunderstorm's back and pounced towards the item. He grabbed it, but Thunderstorm had already flown away with him. The sandstorm instantly swallowed the area. Thunderstorm asked, "What is it?" Lei Xingfeng had already put the item into the hidden Luan space. He said, "I didn't have time to look. I already kept it." This wasn't a good time to look at the loot. They continued to search for items. This was a rare opportunity. There were too many items inside. Most of them were materials. Of course, the materials weren't bad, but compared to the items that could be made, the materials weren't important. Thunderstorm and Lei Xingfeng had already discussed the order of collecting the items. The various training methods were first, followed by the various items. Among them, the combat and defensive items were first, then the rare materials, and finally the items that they encountered. If they could get it, they wouldn't give it up. The two searched back and forth. The curtain of sand behind them was still rapidly expanding, gradually covering the entire space. They didn't know how much sand this hidden Luan space had absorbed from the outside. Moreover, the entire space would emit rumbling sounds, low and shocking. Lei Xingfeng knew in his heart that in this operation, Yi and he had the biggest gains. Even if they had the biggest gains, The items they collected would at most take up 1% or 2% of the treasures in the hidden Lewin space. Out of 100 items, it would already be good if they could take 1 or 2 items. The only consolation was that the items they got were definitely the best. With Thunderstorm's eyes and knowledge, the two picked the best, especially the rare training methods, various tools, and ancient practitioners' medicine. Lei Xingfeng even found many extinct plants and minerals for making medicine. Many star beasts' blood and bones were all extremely precious items. As long as he saw them, he would call Thunderstorm over. 4 days later, the entire space was filled with sand. Outside of 2 to 3 meters, it was a blur. Only then did they search for the items floating around them. They didn't pick any more. As long as there was something, they would keep it. On the 8th day, there was an earth-shattering explosion. All the sand and items fell down rapidly. Huge piles of sand appeared one after another. A large number of items were buried in the sand, including Tai Long and the others. However, they were happy because they could borrow strength. They struggled to get out of the sand, and at the same time, they tried their best to collect the items around them. All of them were grinning from ear to ear. When the sky cleared and almost all the items fell down, Thunderstorm and Lei Xingfeng were still in the air. They saw a strange scene. 2 dazzling items were moving quickly in the air. Lei Xingfeng shouted, "What's that?" "Chase after it." He subconsciously determined that it was definitely a good item. Thunderstorm's pupils shrunk to the size of a needle. He didn't hesitate when he heard the shout. He brought Lei Xingfeng and rushed over. He had already recognized what it was. His heart was beating like a drum. That was the refined Dianghang Thunder liquid, a legendary item. Moreover, it already had a rare spirituality. It actually wanted to escape from the hidden Lewin space. Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Strange, that thing knows how to escape." Thunderstorm squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. "Of course, it has spirituality. That's Dianghang Thunder liquid. That's the opportunity for me to break through." His voice was trembling. 1 big and 1 small, 2 balls of Dianghang Thunder liquid. The big ball of Dianghang Thunder liquid carried the small ball and ran around in the air. Thunderstorm also carried Lei Xingfeng and chased after it, creating a very strange scene. Jean de Peng crawled out from the sand and saw a large piece of metal on the sand. He was pleasantly surprised and hugged it. It was a rare, refined metal. This metal was enough for him to refine a Lewin weapon. He even had some extra. Just as he put it away, he heard the sound of thunder in the sky. He raised his head and saw the strange scene. He was shocked. What the hell is that? Tai Long finally got the item he wanted. It was a rare Lewin weapon. If he advanced again, he would be a true master. He really needed a Lewin weapon. Even if it didn't match his attribute, he could still use it to exchange with others. Thus, he no longer felt sullen and began to frantically search for items. Everyone had something to gain. Of course, there were also many who were injured. There was even a Wan Lewin Shi, who was unlucky enough to be crushed under the sand. He was unable to crawl out and was buried alive. Thunderstorm's cultivation was unfathomable. This guy had always been hiding his cultivation, not telling anyone. Even Lei Xingfeng didn't know. His speed became faster and faster. Lei Xingfeng was being choked by the rope until he couldn't breathe. Only he knew that Yi had reached a critical moment. He forcefully held onto the rope and didn't make a sound. Finally, Thunderstorm caught up to the Dianghang Thunder liquid about 10 meters away. He reached out his hand, and a large lightning hand suddenly appeared, grabbing the ball of Dianghang Thunder liquid. He didn't hesitate to swallow it in one gulp. Following that, he grabbed another ball of Dianghang Thunder liquid. This one was clearly much smaller. The previous one was the size of a pig's head, and this one was the size of a grapefruit. Thunderstorm shouted, "Open your mouth!" Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but open his mouth wide. It wasn't because he was following orders, but because he was shocked to see Thunderstorm swallow the Dianghang Thunder liquid. After that small ball of Dianghang Thunder liquid was grabbed by Thunderstorm, Thunderstorm squeezed it hard. In an instant, the Dianghang Thunder liquid was quickly compressed to the size of an orange. In an instant, it entered Lei Xingfeng's wide-open mouth. As soon as it touched Lei Xingfeng's mouth, it flowed down his throat. Lei Xingfeng felt as if he had swallowed a ball of fire, burning down a line. He covered his mouth and said, this. Thunderstorm's face was full of smiles as he said, it's okay. You have a single lightning attribute Luen mark. Others who eat it will immediately be burned to ashes, but you'll be fine after eating it. Ha 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 ha. He was so excited that he didn't know what to do. He was already confident that he could continue to level up. With this ball of Dianghang Thunder liquid, this trip was definitely worth it. As long as he had time, he was sure that he would be able to level up quickly. Nothing else was worth mentioning. Lei Xingfeng still didn't know how much benefit he had gained. But seeing Thunderstorm so excited, he knew that he had gained something. Although what this benefit was, he still didn't know. Dianghang Thunder liquid was something that almighty beings refined from natural lightning. If a lightning attribute cultivator wanted to absorb it, they would need Lei Yin. In other words, only a true Yin master with 6 true ring bodies could swallow it. Otherwise, they would definitely be burned to ashes. The reason why Lei Xingfeng was able to swallow Dianghang Thunder liquid as a mill-will master was because he had obtained a Lei Yin when he first started cultivating and fused it with his body. Thunderstorm knew about his grandson's background, which was why he dared to let him swallow a ball of Dianghang Thunder liquid. The benefits were indescribable. This would help Lei Xingfeng build a solid foundation for his cultivation. Dianghang Thunder liquid was definitely something that almighty beings could create. Thunderstorm and Lei Xingfeng both started to suspect that the owner of this hidden Luen space was a lightning attribute cultivator. After obtaining the Dianghang Thunder liquid, Thunderstorm was already satisfied. He brought Lei Xingfeng down to the ground. With a whistle, everyone quickly gathered. Thunderstorm said, "Everyone listen to me. Then we will search for items and treasures." Gulu said, "All right, everyone pay attention." Lei Xingfeng looked at everyone curiously. At this time, Jean Depang limped over. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but laugh. Depang, ha 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 ha. He really couldn't help it. This guy was too pitiful. His head was covered in sand, and the sand on his face was washed by sweat. His 2 small eyes were constantly blinking, and there was a layer of sand on his eyelashes. Even the color of his hair couldn't be seen. Laugh, laugh. Jean Depang said, "I'll see you flying around in the sky. If I had a grandpa like you, I would also be able to be proud." His tone was full of envy and jealousy. Lei Xingfeng laughed. "How was the harvest?" Jean Depang immediately became proud. Along the way, he knew that he had struck gold. In the future, when he became a Taoist and condensed his first true ring body, it shouldn't be a big problem. Cultivation was nothing more than talent, techniques, and resources. His talent and techniques weren't a big problem, but he lacked resources. The treasures he obtained this time, whether it was materials or other things, could be used to exchange for things he needed. Tai Long checked his subordinates and found that a few of them were missing. His heart sank, and he immediately ordered them to search for them later. Shi Quan, Hong Chun, and Yen all had good harvests. Although they were in a sorry state, with their bodies covered in sand, their faces were full of smiles. Chapter 78. Tai Popo stood at the side. She would occasionally pick up some things from the ground. They were all small things that fell from the sky. Some of them were precious materials. Yen Wu crawled out from under the sand. No one knew where he crawled to. After he crawled out, his face was filled with joy. He held a black ring in his hand and said, "Hey, does anyone know what this is?" Lei Xingfeng recognized it and said, "That's a small lightning ring. You won't be able to use it. It's used by lightning-type practitioners." Yen Wu was generous. He raised his hand and threw it to Lei Xingfeng and said, "Okay then, I'll give it to you." Lei Xingfeng didn't hold back. Although this thing wasn't precious, it was something that he could use now. It was probably something that the original owner made in the early days. It was placed in the hidden Luin space and was long forgotten. And Yaden stood far away. No one knew what she was thinking. It was rare that she didn't bother Lei Xingfeng. Thunderstorm clapped his hands and said, "Okay, I'll just say a few words. Then everyone can go find their own opportunities. Time is of the essence. I won't waste everyone's time." Everyone listened quietly. They all knew that Elder Thunderstorm wouldn't speak without thinking. Thunderstorm said, "The hidden Luin space will soon completely collapse. It will directly appear at the Thousand Sand Barrier. I can guarantee that there will be a large group of well-prepared experts outside. So once the space collapses, don't hesitate and immediately escape. Kill anyone who chases you. If you can't kill them, then try your best to escape. You can also form small groups. This way you can help each other. Also, don't be greedy. We can't take everything here, leaving behind. Some things will also restrict a large number of people." Tai Long said, "If we don't escape and continue to stay here, I think no one will do anything to us." He had 5 true ring bodies and was very confident in his own strength, especially in Shirong land. As the saying goes, a strong dragon can't defeat a snake in its own territory. He didn't need to be afraid of foreign practitioners. Thunderstorm didn't refute. He nodded and said, "If you want to stay, I won't stop you. Just be careful." Gulu was even more dissatisfied with Tai Long. He had the same thoughts as Elder Thunderstorm. "Since you don't want to listen to advice, then I won't advise you anymore. After all, it's your own." He also made up his mind to leave. His harvest, this time, was second only to Thunderstorm and Lei Xingfeng. He could also fly short distances and was much stronger than the others. He obtained many good things. He planned to exchange with Elder Thunderstorm after leaving and see if he could find something he was satisfied with. Actually, no one would have thought that this hidden Luin space treasure was Hidden Star Luin. They also didn't think that there would be so many things, and also didn't think that it would be so dangerous. If they didn't have the geographical advantage, probably not many people would have survived. Tai Long had his own confidence because he still had subordinates he could use. A few true master-level practitioners made him believe that there shouldn't be many people who could threaten him. Jean Depeng muttered in his heart. He didn't have any elders or masters to help him. He could only rely on himself. After hearing Elder Thunderstorm's words, he immediately understood that once the hidden Luin space appeared, he had to run immediately. He definitely couldn't stay here. He lightly bumped Lei Xingfeng with his shoulder and whispered, "AI, a phone. When you leave, bring me along." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Okay, as long as you follow, there won't be any problems." He didn't object to bringing Jean Depeng along. This fellow gave off a good feeling and was also good at cooking. With him around, there wouldn't be any problems eating. Thunderstorm said, "Okay, everyone continue looking for treasures. A phone, let's go." Jean Depeng hurriedly followed and said, "Old man, I'll go with you, hee." Thunderstorm didn't say anything, but tacitly allowed him to follow. Most of the treasures were already buried in the sand. If they wanted to dig them out, it would be very difficult. Thus, everyone's attention was focused on the surface of the sand. There were plenty of things on the sand, enough for them to pick up. There were all kinds of things on the ground, most of which were various kinds of ores. Because the hidden Luin space wasn't big enough, Lei Xingfeng only looked for rare materials. Only Elder Thunderstorm didn't reject anything. Wherever he went, almost everything was swept clean. Lei Xingfeng even found a few ancient golden rings. They were different from the ones used in the modern era. The ancient golden rings were the size of a palm and covered with patterns. He didn't want them at first, but Jean de Pang said that these things were very valuable, much more valuable than the ones used in the modern era. Some practitioners liked to collect them. These golden rings were also known as flower golden rings or ancient golden rings. One ancient golden ring could be exchanged for a few thousand golden rings. There were quite a lot of ancient golden rings here, and they didn't take up much of the hidden Luan space. Thus, Lei Xingfeng conveniently kept them. It wasn't that he liked them, but that he brought them for Lei Xingyao. The little girl liked them the most, so he gave them to her as a small gift. A few days later, Lei Xingfeng's hidden Luan space was full. He had no choice but to start throwing away some of the worthless things. As for Lei Bao, Gulu, and the other experts, they began to attack the sand pile, blasting the ground open and blasting out the things buried below. The others were picking up the cheap stuff from the side. The things that the adept wanted were of a higher grade, so he was too lazy to collect the things that he didn't need. They all benefited the juniors on the side. They were all juniors, so no one dared to compete with the juniors. According to Lei Xingfeng's estimation, once this hidden Luan space appeared, it would take up no less than 1,000 square kilometers, a very large area. Thunderstorm also gradually stopped. He knew that he couldn't take everything. He was already very lucky to have gotten the lightning serum and a few star python skin records. What he needed to consider now was how to leave smoothly. He was different from Tai Long. He had experienced too many things, and his intuition towards danger was especially strong. He instinctively felt that this trip wouldn't be smooth. If he was alone, he wouldn't be afraid, but he had to bring Lei Xingfeng and pick up Lei Xingyao. These were two huge burdens that definitely wouldn't drag him down. For this, Thunderstorm had to be prepared. He didn't want to be caught unprepared. After discussing with Gulu and the others, each of them had a rough plan. As for Tai Long, he was obviously blinded by the things in the hidden Luan space. He brought a group of underlings to search and excavate with all his might. It couldn't be blamed. He had a large group of underlings to feed, with so many ready-made things. How could he let go of them? The old man Thunderstorm understood that with Tai Long's greedy methods, he would definitely suffer in the end. He had already reminded him that the other party wasn't a normal practitioner, but a true master with 5 true ring bodies. He wasn't his underling and was only a friend. He couldn't control the other party's actions, so he didn't say anything else. Lei Xingfeng also stopped searching and began to train. This place had already been confirmed. It was the hidden Luan space of an ancient almighty. Moreover, it was a lightning attributed almighty, which would be of great help to him. Training here was even better than training outside. These few days he had gained a lot, and his training had increased by leaps and bounds. On this day, the entire space began to tremble violently. The old man Thunderstorm immediately gathered everyone, other than Tai Long's group. Everyone else gathered around the old man Thunderstorm, preparing for the collapse of the hidden Luan space. Tai Long brought his underlings and prepared for the collapse of the space. Thunderstorm and Gulu released their seals. One was Lei Yin, the other was Fire Seal, protecting everyone as they waited for the collapse of the space. Kacha sounds mixed with rumbling sounds. The ground began to tremble violently. Large amounts of items were jolted out from the ground. At this time, no one dared to go out and pick them up. They could only watch with their eyes wide open. Waves of sand rose up, and the entire space became blurry once again. It was as if a huge eggshell had suddenly cracked open, and the invisible impact instantly erupted. The people outside could clearly see a cloud of smoke and dust suddenly spread out, as if the entire sky had exploded. The sand that covered the sky, and the sun rose up, forming a wall of sandstorm that quickly spread out in all directions. Not only were there countless amounts of sand, there were also large amounts of materials and items. It was simply like treasures falling from the sky. Someone had already picked up the items that dropped down and let out a shout of joy, but before he could keep it in his hidden Lewin space, he was hacked to death, and the items were immediately snatched away. In an instant, the outside was in a mess. At this time, the number of practitioners that had rushed here had already reached tens of thousands. It was truly a sea of people outside. When the sandstorm came, almost no one dodged, but rather rushed in. They all knew that the collapse of the space meant that large amounts of items and materials would appear. No one would leave. This meant opportunity and a lot of wealth. Si Dineo brought a large group of people. He said in a deep voice, "No one move. Wait." Sunburu laughed. "The person inside hasn't appeared yet. What's the rush? Hee. The good stuff should be in the hands of that group of people, right? It's that thunderstorm." "Right." He turned his head and said to Dayton. Dayton nodded. "That's right, it's that guy. If we catch him, we might be able to get some good stuff." Si Dineo said, "Don't worry, he won't be able to escape." Sand flew everywhere, as the people who had jumped into the sandstorm madly tried to escape. In that instant, countless people were covered with blood. The speed at which the sand shot out was so fast that it pierced through those with weaker defenses. In just the blink of an eye, at least hundreds of people died, and thousands of people were injured as they tried to escape in a wretched state. Dayton laughed coldly. "If you want to take advantage, you have to look at your own strength. This group of idiots." Sunburu laughed. "Wealth moves people. What's so strange about that?" Si Dineo said, "All right, be careful. Someone is about to appear." The sandstorm had already reached their group. Si Dano suddenly flew into the air, raised his hand, and punched out. With a boom, the entire sandstorm that was pressing down on them collapsed. It was actually blown apart by his punch in the air, and a huge gap appeared. Chapter 79. The collapse of the hidden Lewin space happened in an instant. As long as they could withstand that huge force, there would be no danger. The dust that filled the sky covered the entire sky. However, this only lasted for half an hour before it started to fall. Their vision started to clear up, and countless things started to appear on the sand. Battle cries filled the air. In order for practitioners to occupy a place, they had to kill others. Only then would they be able to collect the things on the sand. No one wanted to be ambushed and killed while they were digging. Thus, choosing to fight became a necessity. Thunderstorm's group didn't wait for the dust to dissipate and immediately charged out. Thunderstorm even carried Lei Xingfeng on his back. Even if Lei Xingfeng was already a mill-wheel master, he was still a 16-year-old youth. There were many practitioners here with bad intentions, and Thunderstorm didn't want any accidents to happen. Jean Depang followed Thunderstorm and ran forward. He didn't want to escape alone. Although Jean Depang was fat, he wasn't an idiot. In fact, he was a very smart fatty. Gulu, Tai Popo, and Yaden, Qi Xian, Yanwu, Hong Chun, and Yen Yen all followed Thunderstorm. As for Tai Long's group, they had already split up. They weren't satisfied and continued to stay in place. Yen Wu and Gulu charged at the front. Tai Popo and Yaden split into the left and right. Other than Yen Yen, Jean Depang, and Lei Xingfeng, who were mill-wheel masters, the others were all true masters. Yen Wu and Gulu, who were at the front, didn't hold back at all. They pushed forward and killed everything in their path. Any practitioners who blocked their path and tried to kill each other were all their targets. They didn't have time to explain, as they were in a hurry to leave this place. Si Danua's fist opened up a large empty space, and all the sand was dispersed. Battle cries rang out. Even if the practitioners retreated, they also began to kill each other. Everyone from each faction gathered together, trying to occupy a good place. After a while, the sand started to dissipate. See, Danua said, Dayton, bring people and start cleaning up. Kill cleanly. I don't want to see anyone alive. Dayton rubbed his fists and said, Senior, don't worry. Watch me. Follow me. He waved his hand and pointed forward. Kill. 200 true masters followed Dayton and quickly spread out, attacking the cultivators in front of them. Behind Dano, there were still a few hundred cultivators who were also true masters. This force was enough to sweep through the entire Shirong land. When the 200 enlightened beings began their slaughter, the cultivators from the various major powers who had rushed over were all frightened. This group was too abnormal. Even elder enlightened beings were killed without any room to struggle. It was as if they were slaughtering chickens and dogs. Of course, the cultivators who were still fighting were not fools. They immediately dispersed. Sistano ordered, Men! A perfected master stepped forward and said, Yes, split into groups of 3 and kill our way in. Sistano said indifferently. The enlightened masters behind him immediately moved. When they rushed out, they each formed a 3-man team and quickly killed their way in. These hundreds of enlightened masters were like highly efficient killing machines. No one could stop them. Even enlightened masters couldn't stop their slaughter. Sun Buru laughed. Shirong land, hee. After this battle, at least half of the elites were lost. Danua said, Such a small place. How many elites can there be? Sun Buru nodded. I hope we can get a good income. Danua said, It's best if we can capture the first batch alive. Otherwise, the losses will be huge. Sun Buru laughed bitterly. We received the news too late. Luckily, we made it in time. Otherwise, it would be even more regretful. He and Danua both understood that the first to enter had the chance to get the best things. Of course, in this hidden Luan space, they couldn't get everything, but their chances of getting something good were still high. One day later, Tai Long ordered his subordinates to dig with all their might. One after another, all sorts of materials and items were dug out. Tai Long was very excited. Looking at the direction Elder Thunderstorm left, he was very pleased. With the items he got this time, he had the confidence to raise his own strength. He could also raise the strength of his subordinates. According to his thoughts, after this adventure, Tai Long Night Fortress should be able to grow into the 4th largest power in Shirong land. At this time, a dozen enlightened masters had already closed in. They were all in groups of 3. Before Tai Long could react, they were already surrounded. This was the central area. It was obvious that they were the first batch to enter. They were the targets of Danua's subordinates. Once the dozen enlightened masters released their auras, Tai Long instantly understood that they weren't their opponents. He suddenly realized, but there was no medicine for regret. His vision darkened. The only thought in his mind was that they were done for. He couldn't understand why there were so many enlightened masters. Moreover, they were so strong. If there were only a few, he had the confidence to fight. Even if there were 7 or 8 enlightened masters, he still had some confidence. But with a dozen of them, he really didn't have the confidence. The next scene made Tai Long feel even more hopeless. Another 7 or 8 enlightened masters came. He suppressed the panic in his heart and stepped forward. We are from Tai Long Night Fortress. You capture them. Those people didn't plan on paying attention to them and directly ordered to capture them. Tai Long was an expert, after all. He roared and charged towards the place with fewer people. No matter what, he wasn't willing to be captured. He believed that he wouldn't have a good ending. As a true treasure Luanine master with 5 true ring bodies, one step away from becoming a true master, he wasn't a pushover. Once he went all out, even a true master would have to avoid him. It was a pity that not only were there true masters, there were also a few of them, adding on other enlightened masters. The result was that Tai Long was directly knocked to the ground. If they didn't want to capture him alive, he probably wouldn't have survived. The moment he was captured, Tai Long suddenly understood. It wasn't that these people didn't want his life, but they wanted the things he obtained. If he died, then the things in his hidden Luan space, they would never be able to obtain them. In other words, before he spat out the things, he was safe. Of course, if he took them out, his life would most likely be gone. Old Man Thunderstorm brought the group, and just happened to avoid Sina's people. Their speed was extremely fast, and because of the location he chose, they just missed each other. When Sina's people blocked their path, they had already passed by. The difference between the two was less than 15 minutes. If Thunderstorm had hesitated for even a moment, they would have met. Running madly, they headed towards Stellar Night Fortress. As for what would happen after, Thunderstorm and the others didn't care. To be able to leave smoothly was already a victory. After passing through the ancient Luan Passage, Thunderstorm and the others returned to Stellar Night Fortress. Just as they entered the fortress, they received a piece of bad news. Aslan had actually left with Lei Xian Yao, saying that she was bringing her to play. This angered Old Man Thunderstorm so much that he lost his temper. He had originally planned to bring Lei Xian Yao away. This wasn't a place to stay, but he didn't expect to encounter such a situation. After asking repeatedly, Old Man Thunderstorm received news that Aslan had gone to Wanxi continent, which was very far from the barbarian gathering continent. Thunderstorm already understood that Aslan wouldn't return immediately. She wanted to kidnap Lei Xian Yao. Lei Xingfeng was even angrier. He said, Yi, let's go to Wanxi continent. Finally calming down, Thunderstorm calculated for a moment and said, let's wait a few days. If there's no news, we'll go to Wanxi continent. Lei Xingfeng also calmed down. To be able to give up the treasure in the hidden Luan space, the price was to have the chance to kidnap Lei Xian Yao. Aslan should have already calculated this. He said, all right, then let's wait a few days. Maybe she's not going to Wanxi continent, but to play nearby. He couldn't help but think this way. Jean de Peng came over to say goodbye. He had to return. He said, after I return, I'll resign from my position as an officer in Shirong Nation. He had received so many training resources, of course, he wouldn't stay in the army anymore. Shi Quan, Hong Chun, and Yen also left. They couldn't use Luan spots and couldn't leave through the ancient Luan passage. They could only walk back, which would take a long time. Yen Wu, Tai Popo, and Yaden didn't leave in a hurry. They wanted to make a deal with Thunderstorm. They wanted to exchange some of the items they got. The items they got in the hidden Luan space might not be suitable for them. Old Man Thunderstorm got the most items. Maybe he had something they needed. This kind of deal was something everyone was happy to do. After getting the treasures, they also needed to organize them. Lei Xingfeng got a lot of items. His hidden Luan space was already full. He also needed to organize them. Some of the items could be given to Yi. There were also some items that he couldn't use and could exchange with others. Of course, if there were items that could be used by Lei Xingfeng, he would carefully store them away. When he meets Lei Xingfeng in the future, he could give them to her. After organizing the transactions, Lei Xingfeng collected a lot of things that he could use. There were also some things that he had doubts about, which he kept. There were a lot of things that the ancient practitioners couldn't understand. If he kept them and slowly pondered over them, one day he would be able to understand them. Tai Long was already tortured to the point that he didn't look human anymore. It wasn't that he didn't want to hand over the things he got, but he knew in his heart that once he handed over the things he got, he would be completely finished. He would definitely be killed. Many of his subordinates couldn't take the torture and gradually handed over the things he got. But very quickly, new torture came. The reason was very simple. You must have something else. Hand it over, and you won't be tortured. This was a cycle. Hand over the things, and you can get some time to rest. You can even eat something and then continue the torture. Chapter 80. Today, Tai Long was hung under the scorching sun. An old man walked over and said, "Put him down and bring him to my tent." Tai Long was dragged into a huge tent. He was completely controlled. Not only was he unable to control his body, he was also unable to control his hidden Luan space. It was sealed. Tai Long tried his best to take a closer look at the man. When he did, his dry lips trembled, and he mumbled, "E. Dayton." E. Dayton took out a cup of water and said, "Hee, I didn't think we would be old friends. I actually didn't know you were the one who was caught. It's a pity I didn't catch the other person." Tai Long sipped the water. After a while, he said, "Are you talking about Thunderstorm?" E. Dayton nodded. "That's right. I couldn't find him after 2 days. He wasn't among the corpses. I suspect he escaped." Tai Long drank the water and felt slightly better. "You want to catch Thunderstorm with your level? Don't you think you're too arrogant? You were beaten like a dead dog back then." "Ha ha, cough, cough. So it was your people who caught me." "No, with your level. How could you have so many experts, cough, cough?" E. Dayton's face turned pale. He stared at Tai Long and said, "You're worse than a dead dog now." Tai Long said, "Cough, cough. Yes, yes. I'm worse than a dead dog. If you have the ability, kill me." E. Dayton really didn't dare to kill him. Before he spat out the treasures, they could only torture him. They definitely didn't dare to kill him. E. Dayton reached out and patted Tai Long's face. "Can you tell me, where did Thunderstorm go?" Tai Long hated him to the core. "You want to find him? Are you in a hurry to die?" "That's not right. Cough, 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 cough." "Oh, I get it. You're probably relying on some big power. You want to rely on numbers. Cough, cough, unless there's a powerful expert. I believe that with your level, when you see Lei Bao, he'll definitely kill you." E. Dayton's body suddenly emitted a powerful aura, pressuring Tai Lang to the point that he couldn't breathe. After a while, Tai Lang gasped, "So you're already a true E master. No wonder you're so arrogant. Ha ha. But you still can't compare to Thunderstorm. You'll still lose. Ha ha. Cough, cough." "Ah." E. Dayton kicked Tai Long away and stomped on his hand. He spun his toes and said, "Is that so? Is that so?" Sidana walked in and said calmly, "Let him go." E. Dayton quickly retracted his foot and said, "Senior, I'm interrogating him." He nodded and bowed. Tai Lang said, "Ha, cough, cough. Ha." E. Dayton, you're still so shameless. When you see someone stronger than you, you bow and scrape. And when you see someone weaker, you bully them. Cough, cough. I just can't stand your cowardice." Citano sat down and said, "Thunderstorm should have gotten the best treasure. You should have a lot too. Hand it over, and I will spare your life." Tai Long sneered and said, "I don't think you'll spare my life after I hand it over." Cough, 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 cough. Citano said calmly, "In the name of the Ashen Seal Enlightened Master, as long as you hand it over, I will spare your life." Ashen Seal Enlightened Master. This meant that he was an expert with 9 true ring bodies. On this continent, he was a peak expert. Tai Long was stunned. He didn't think that an ancient hidden Luan space would attract such a strong existence. He said, You cough, 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 cough." He was truly frightened. A true E-master with 6 true ring bodies was definitely a peak figure in the large sections. As for those with 7, 8, and 9 true ring bodies, they were mostly legendary figures. It wasn't surprising for him. As a true E-master with 5 true ring bodies, it was hard for him to come into contact with the higher circles. E. Dayton was very satisfied with Tai Long's shock. He said, "Are you still not going to agree with Senior?" Tai Long was only shocked by the opponent's strength, but he didn't lose his basic judgment. He said, "I know that even if you're the Ashen Seal, enlightened master, cough cough, you're still a fucking person. Everyone has a greedy heart, and those who are strong are even more greedy. Cough cough, I don't believe you, just kill me." Citano indeed didn't plan on letting Tai Long go. Even if he didn't, he had enough people to do it. No matter what, he wouldn't let Tai Long go. E. Dayton scolded, "You bastard, stubborn idiot." Tai Long opened his dry mouth and laughed silently. Then he coughed and spat out blood. He said, "You're even more of a bastard, idiot. You're stupid, so don't be jealous of other people's intelligence." Citano frowned and said, "Lock him up." Before dragging Tai Long away, a true master came over and said, "Senior, I've found out. They're stationed in Shirong Nation called Tai Long Night Fortress. I heard Thunderstorm's granddaughter is there. They will definitely go over. However, I'm not sure how long they'll stay." Tai Long spat out another mouthful of blood. He was anxious and angry. He knew that his subordinate couldn't take the torture and confessed. Citano smiled and said, "Very good, Tai Long, very soon. Thunderstorm will be here to accompany you." Tai Long muttered in a low voice, "I hope you die." Even with C. Dano's 9th ring true body, he couldn't hear his words clearly. Citano said, "E. Dayton, come with me." Finding son Buru, Citano said, "I need to go out for a while. Here, you'll be in charge of digging and collecting the items. No matter who comes, if they dare to come in, kill them. I don't want any accidents. I believe there's definitely something good here. They can't have everything." This was actually just a guess. See, Ano did not know what good things Lei Bao had taken away. He had his own thoughts based on the information he got from Tai Long's subordinates. However, he still understood that Lei Bao must have gotten some of the best things, and they were key items such as cultivation methods. This was extremely important to him. He had no other way to cultivate and urgently needed ancient cultivation methods for reference. This was also the reason why Siano was in a hurry to find Lei Bao. Sun Buru nodded. "No problem. We caught a few thousand people. We've sealed their hidden Luin space. They can't keep the items we dig out." Citano said, "And don't worry. I'll share the items with you." Sun Buru, of course, understood. The so-called sharing must be training methods. He couldn't share anything else. Even so, he was satisfied and said, "Okay, no problem. Leave this to me." Citano said, "Do we have enough people?" Sun Buru laughed bitterly. "To completely turn this place over, we don't have enough people. Why don't we send a dozen true masters to each sect to capture people? I need a large amount of people." Citano nodded. "All right, you find someone to take care of it. I won't bother." He brought E. Dayton, and Citano left. He also brought a guide. He wasn't familiar with Shirong country. The guide was a Wan Luan Shur from Stellar Night Fortress. Because he couldn't take the torture, he sold Stellar Night Fortress. He said everything he could and didn't say. This Wan Luan Shur was called Ho Lu, nicknamed Monkey. He was known for his cunning. He was extremely afraid of death and pain. After being captured and tortured for a day, he completely surrendered. Citano used the Luan spot and quickly activated the ancient Luan passage. He quickly entered Shirong country. With Holu as a spy, C. Dano and E. Dayton easily found Stellar Night Fortress. Moreover, they came very quickly. Using C. Dano's secret technique, the three of them crossed the small stone bridge in less than 3 days. A patrol from Stellar Night Fortress saw them and immediately went up to ask, Holu naturally recognized them. He went up and said, "It's me." The patrol saw Holu and said in shock, "It's you, monkey. Where are the others?" Holu didn't answer. He said, "I have something important to do. Is Senior Thunderstorm still there?" He stared at him nervously. Citano already promised him that once Thunderstorm was in Stellar Night Fortress, he would immediately let him go. The patrol team member said, "Senior Lei Bao will be leaving soon. He'll be leaving tomorrow. Right now, they're in Night Fortress." Holu quickly turned back. "Senior, he's that." He wanted to say, "Can you let me go?" However, before he could say anything, E. Dayton punched him in the head, causing his head to explode. Following that, E. Dayton started his massacre. Citano put his hands behind his back and smiled. He did promise Holu. Of course, E. Dayton didn't, so he didn't do anything. E. Dayton killed him instead. Needless to say, Tai Long was a smart person. He didn't agree to any of Citano's conditions. The strongest in the patrol team was only a Miloon master. How could they fight against a true E master with 6 true ring bodies? In a few breaths of time, they were all killed. No one could escape. They couldn't even send out a warning. The opponent's strength was too strong. The two of them swaggered towards the Night Stronghold. That was the center of Stellar Night Stronghold. Dano smiled as he watched E. Dayton casually kill people one by one. Finally, there were still people who escaped and sent out a warning. The cultivators who rushed out to help were simply sending themselves to their deaths. If they hid in their houses, E. Dayton would not search for them and kill them. However, if they ran out to stop him, then he would not have any psychological burden to kill them. Very quickly, the two arrived at the fortress, the huge umbrella-shaped building's entrance. The cultivators here scattered. Thunderstorm and the others also received the news. Yenwu said, "That's not right. 2 people coming in, did they come from Thousand Sand Barrier?" Gulu said, "Very likely." Thunderstorm thought for a moment and said, "Let's go take a look." To be able to come in so arrogantly, they were either crazy or strong. He leaned towards the latter. Chapter 81. Thunderstorm, Gulu, Taipopo, and Yaden, Yenwu, as well as Lei Xingfeng, who had been following Thunderstorm, the 6 of them walked out together. When Lei Bao saw Dano clearly, he couldn't help but frown. He couldn't feel his opponent's strength, which was very rare. With his cultivation, as long as he was a cultivator, he could roughly guess the opponent's strength. Could this person's strength be higher than his? He immediately became vigilant. His gaze turned to E. Dayton. Thunderstorm said lightly, "So, it's you?" He recognized E. Dayton. E. Dayton was also very surprised. He also couldn't see the depth of Elder Thunderstorm's strength. One must know that his strength had increased explosively in the past few years. Before he came, he estimated that even if he couldn't beat Elder Thunderstorm, he could at least fight him. He didn't think that after not seeing him for so many years, this irritable old man's strength had also increased greatly. However, with Dano here, he was very calm. Dano was also very surprised. He could only vaguely sense Elder Thunderstorm's power. It gave off a violent feeling, but he couldn't see the bottom of it. His expression was calm as he said, "You are Thunderstorm?" In that instant, he changed his mind. He didn't want to use force to solve this problem. Thunderstorm said, "Who are you?" Dano said, Dano, Ashen Seal, Enlightened Master." Thunderstorm stood steadily and said, "No wonder you're so arrogant." The others, including Gulu, and the others couldn't help but take a step back. It was 2F* King scary. Even with their knowledge, it was their first time seeing a peak Enlightened Master. A 9th ring Enlightened Master might exist on this continent, but it was their first time seeing a living person. Dano wasn't angry and said, "You're about the same. I guess You're at least a true heart-e master. You almost ended up like me. These words were even more shocking. Yen Wu, Gulu, Tai Popo, and Inyadan all had extremely shocked expressions. No one thought that the old man had hidden his strength so deeply. Lei Xingfeng was also shocked. He had always guessed how strong A Yi was, but he never thought that A Yi would be at this level. Thunderstorm said, "Not as good as you." Edaton's face paled. He could no longer imagine that Thunderstorm's cultivation level was so much higher than his own. He couldn't help but secretly rejoice that he had followed Si Dano here. If he had come alone, he would have been killed. If Thunderstorm was only a Mad-E master with 7 true ring bodies, then Si Dano wouldn't hesitate to capture him. But a true Heart-E master with 8 true ring bodies, he wasn't so sure. Especially since the old man Thunderstorm was a lightning-type cultivator, his attacks were definitely powerful, and Thunderstorm's attributes countered his. Si Dano was of the dark attribute, and his attacks were also very powerful. However, the dark attribute was naturally countered by the lightning attribute. His light and lightning attribute training, as long as it was possible, he would kill. Every time he killed, there would be one less threat to him in the future. In this life, he had killed countless lightning and light attribute people. However, Thunderstorm had already reached the level of a true Heart-E master. He wasn't someone that could be killed so easily. If he had to fight with Thunderstorm, he might win, but he definitely wouldn't be able to keep Thunderstorm alive. Provoking such an enemy and not being able to kill him was something he wasn't willing to do. Thunderstorm said, "You captured Tai Long?" Dayton shouted, "Tai Long, that trash. There was no need for Senior to capture him. Anyone could have captured him." He wanted to provoke a fight between Si Dano and Thunderstorm. He could already see that Si Dano was hesitating. Si Dano's heart flashed with a trace of regret. He knew that he had been careless. If he had brought Sun Buru, he would have won for sure. He didn't expect Thunderstorm to be a true Heart-E master. This was going to be troublesome. However, he wasn't afraid. After all, he was a level higher than Thunderstorm. Even if the opponent's attributes countered his, once they fought, he didn't think that he would lose. As for the others, in his eyes, they were just chickens and dogs, not worth mentioning. Thunderstorm said, "Let him go." No matter what, Tai Long was his friend. Si Dano's face darkened. "Whether I let him go or not, it has nothing to do with you." Thunderstorm nodded. He didn't expect him to let him go, and he was already planning to escape. As long as he could escape, with the treasures he got this time, and the secret of training in the Thunderstorm, he had absolute confidence in advancing to a true Ashen Seal. He was actually already on the verge of advancing, but because he didn't have time to train, he was temporarily stuck at this bottleneck, so fighting with Si Dano here wasn't a wise move. He was already past the age where his blood boiled. He wouldn't attack just because of a few words. At this moment, he somewhat understood Tai Long's feelings. Some things had to be done. As long as he escaped, Si Dano wouldn't dare to kill Tai Long. Offending a true Heart-E master wasn't an easy thing. Who knew when a true Heart-E master would advance to a true Ashen Seal? After reaching the 9th true ring stage, there were very few conflicts between true Ashen Seal masters. There were countless concerns. A true Ashen Seal master could often control many true masters. A battle between two sides could easily affect their subordinates. A 9th true ring body Ashen Seal master could easily kill a normal true master. This was also the reason why Si Dano hesitated. If Sun Buru came, then with an 8th true ring body master and a 9th true ring body master working together, they would have a high chance of stopping a true Heart-E master. This made Si Dano very regretful. Dayton shouted, "Who do you think you are? You dare to ask Senior to let him go?" Thunderstorm stared at him and said, Dayton, very good. Don't let me see you again." His tone was very light, but it was very threatening. Dayton didn't dare to speak. His heart filled with regret. See, Dano didn't care about him, but that didn't mean he didn't care. Without See Dano around, Thunderstorm could crush him like an ant. Lei Xingfeng found. The stronger a true master, the more careful they would be in battle, the less likely they would act. With Old Man Thunderstorm's temper, he was still talking nonsense. It was clear how much he was worried. See, Dano said, "You should have gotten a lot of things this time." Thunderstorm said, "That's right, I got a lot of things. What do you plan to do? Same as Tai Long? Capture us and force us out bit by bit?" See, Dano let out his signature smile and said, "Of course not. My subordinates control the entire Thousand Sand Barrier. Hee hee. In other words, after the entire Thousand Sand Barrier is excavated, everything is mine. I believe we can make a deal. How about it?" Thunderstorm was also a veteran. He had seen all kinds of schemes. He smiled and said, "Not interested. I already got what I need. There's no need to go back." See, Dano thought, old fox. If he could trick Thunderstorm back, then even if he was a true Heart-E master, he would be dead for sure. No, he would be better off dead. E. Dayton also thought it was a pity. He immediately understood C. Dano's thoughts. C. Dano said, "I don't know if you got the Star Python record. If you did, I hope we can trade." He thought it was impossible and said, "And it's fine if you don't want to trade. Give me a copy. I'll give you the price." Thunderstorm found it funny. Giving him the Star Python record would have serious consequences. Once he broke through, he and C. Dano would no longer be friends. He said, "I didn't get the Star Python record. If I did, I would have left long ago." The reason he didn't leave wasn't because of this, but he said it naturally and sincerely. It didn't seem like he was lying at all. Only Lei Xingfeng knew he had the Star Python record. Lei Xingfeng was full of admiration. He didn't think that a Ye's ability to lie would be so high. Even he almost believed him. But he clearly knew that old Thunderstorm didn't just have the Star Python record. He had more than one. See, Dano's face became uglier and uglier. He said, "You don't have it?" He didn't believe him at all. He knew this old man was lying, but he didn't have any better methods to make him take it out. Old Thunderstorm said, "No." See, Dano finally couldn't take it anymore. He really needed it. He didn't care if he offended a true Heart-E master. He said, "Say, if we fight, how many of your people can survive?" Old Thunderstorm said, "Are you threatening me?" See, Dano said straightforwardly, "Of course." Old Thunderstorm's face darkened. He said, "You can try." He actually wanted to fight See, Dano. He knew he was about to level up. He was one step away from true ring body, plus he was a lightning type. His attacks would definitely be strong. He didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to retaliate against C. Dano. Without hesitation, Yen Wu grabbed Xian Feng and quickly retreated back into the night stronghold. Tai Popo and Inyaden guarded his left and right as they also retreated back into the night stronghold. Only Gulu faced E. Dayton and blocked their way, while the old man Lei Bao also stood in front of C. Dano. Both sides attacked without hesitation. Old Thunderstorm relaxed slightly because Yen Wu's cleverness allowed him to escape from the greatest danger. This was also because C. Dano didn't know the exact situation. If he grabbed Lei Xingfeng, old Thunderstorm probably wouldn't be able to do anything. That was his greatest weakness. C. Dano and Thunderstorm attacked at the same time. Gulu and E. Dayton also attacked at the same time. C. Dano's target was Gulu, while Lei Bao's target was E. Dayton. Both of them had the same goal, which was to launch a sneak attack before continuing to fight. Both of them wanted to injure their opponent in one move. E. Dayton was sent flying by a thick bolt of lightning from Lei Bao, while Gulu was also struck to the point of vomiting blood. Lei Bao shouted, "Gulu, take them away!" He met C. Dano's fist head-on. Boom! Gulu clutched his chest, stumbling back into Night Fortress. He understood Thunderstorm's meaning. It was to take Lei Xingfeng away. Chapter 82. E. Dayton sat on the ground, spitting out mouthful after mouthful of blood. He looked at Thunderstorm with lingering fear. Just one move was enough to heavily injure him. If he didn't have an excellent defensive tool, he would be dead for sure. Black smoke rose up and quickly spread out. Dayton tried his best to escape. He wasn't stupid. He knew that when two super experts were fighting, the surrounding people wouldn't be able to escape. He used his force at all costs. Any house or wall that was in his way was knocked down by him. The black light was like a devil. Once it came into contact with anything, it would emit a sizzling sound. The cold, corrosive energy caused the house to collapse in a few breaths of time. If a person was still around, he would have turned into a pile of ash. Thunderstorm's body was glowing. With a roar, countless arcs of electricity flew out and spread out. Stano was shocked to find that his opponent's lightning power was indeed the bane of his existence. He raised his fist and punched out. An invisible pressure suddenly enveloped Lei Bao's body and exploded with a loud boom. An invisible shockwave was formed between the two of them, and everything around them was blown away. Gulu had already led his men to escape from the other side of the night fortress. Just as they left, a huge shockwave spread out and destroyed the night fortress in an instant. Yan Wu carried Lei Xingfeng on his back, while the others ran madly. Their speed was unimaginable to Lei Xingfeng. He felt as if he was sitting on the fastest car. The wind that blew against him made it hard for him to breathe. He could only bury his head in Yan Wu's back and turn his head to breathe smoothly. He saw a shocking scene. The entire umbrella-shaped structure of the night fortress was silently shattered into pieces. A ray of black light and a ray of silver light rose from the ground. The two figures rushed to the ground and fought all the way to the sky. Thunder and lightning roared, and the entire sky darkened. The two fought. One was like a dark cloud. The other was like lightning. Thunderstorm was fighting fiercely. Dano was shocked. He had never fought with a high-level lightning cultivator before. He didn't expect it to be so explosive. Although he was a level higher than Thunderstorm, he couldn't completely suppress him. Both of them did not use their most powerful moves to fight. Instead, they kept probing each other. Even so, their fight was still earth-shattering. Countless cultivators on the ground were running for their lives. It was too horrifying. As long as they were slightly affected, the cultivators would suffer heavy casualties. It was a classic example of a fire at the city gate, bringing disaster to the fish in the moat. No one dared to stay where they were. If they ran too slow, their lives would be in danger. The sky was trembling, and the ground was burning. Arcs of electricity hit the ground and ignited countless fires. If it was just the flames, it would be fine. However, countless black raindrops fell, and green smoke rose from the ground. The corrosive power was too terrifying. Even if the cultivators had defenses, they couldn't stop it. As long as one drop fell on the body, a large hole would quickly appear, and the corrosive power would quickly spread. Dozens of people died because of it, and the surrounding people were scared out of their wits. Bolts of lightning struck down. Thunderstorm and Dano fought from the sky to the ground, and then from the ground to the sky. The more they fought, the angrier they became. Gradually, they became unrestrained. Thousand Thunderstorm. Thunder roared, and leaping arcs of electricity filled the sky. The cold air in the sky was driven away, and Dano's figure was revealed. He was instantly furious. Cold gale. Circles of cold gale flew. They turned into foot-long black needles and broke through the thousand Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm burst out. A thunder ring spread. Thunderstorm sneered. Ashen Seal Enlightened Master, how impressive! He was already confident that he could escape. His opponent was indeed stronger than him, but he wasn't afraid at all. Moreover, He realized that his lightning energy made his opponent unable to display his full strength. This was a suppression of attributes, and it wasn't something that could be solved by effort, unless the difference in strength between the two of them was too great. But now that their strengths were close, this suppression was enough for Lei Bao to protect himself. Si Tenua was enraged. This was the first time he was so restrained. This kind of humiliation made him extremely depressed. He roared, "Bastard, I'll let you see what a true Ashen True Master is. Motherf asterisk cur." Blood rain. Si Dano's dark seal flew out and instantly covered the sky and the earth, covering an area of hundreds of kilometers. The people on the ground, who had already escaped dozens of kilometers away, realized that the sky seemed to be covered. It was dark, and they smelled the scent of blood. Everyone began to tremble from the bottom of their hearts. There were still many ordinary people outside Stellar Night Fortress. They died on the ground without a sound. Just the smell of blood was enough to kill them. Lei Bao's entire body was like a gigantic spotlight, flashing with a silver light. Countless thick arcs of lightning gave off roaring sounds as they spread outwards. Once they came into contact with the air outside, sizzling sounds could be heard, and strands of green smoke floated up and dissipated. No matter how sinister an attack was, it would immediately turn to ashes when it came into contact with lightning. This was the benefit of having an elemental counter. Yen Wu and the others didn't dare to stay. Although they weren't at the level of Si Dano and Thunderstorm, they knew that in a battle of this level, it was better to stay as far away as possible. Under Gulu's constant urging, they had already gone down hundreds of kilometers, just enough to avoid Si Dano's dark seal. However, there was one person who didn't dodge, and that was Dayton. It wasn't that he didn't know the danger. He just didn't expect Si Dano to be so crazy as to use the dark seal. Luckily, he had 6 true ring bodies. He used his own seal to barely block it. Even so, it made his injuries worse. He quickly took out a tube of green medicine and drank it. It was a high-level medicine, and it made him feel better. On the ground, no matter if it was cultivators or ordinary people, other than Dayton, everyone was killed by Si Dano. From then on, Stellar Night Fortress disappeared from Shirong Nation. Yen Wu and the others stopped. Looking at the sky covered in darkness, he said, "Do we wait?" Gulu said, "We can't wait. We have to leave immediately, cough, cough." He spat out a mouthful of blood and said, "Damn, that was strong. I didn't die." He took out a tube of medicine and drank it to suppress his injuries. He said, "Let's find the nearest Luan spot and leave immediately." Yen Wu said, "All right, I know it's not wise to stay. What does everyone say?" Taipopo said, "Let's go." And Yadin said, "I'll take a phone and leave. A phone can stay at my place for a few days. We'll talk when Ai comes." Lei Xingfeng shook his head. "No, I'll go with brother Yen Wu." He didn't want to go to Yadin's place. This woman was crazy. And Yadin said, "A phone? You hurt me too much. I treated you so well." Lei Xingfeng had a headache. He didn't want to have anything to do with Yadin. He said, I know, but I want to go with brother Yen Wu." And Yadin couldn't force him. She said, all right. Then, if you have the chance, you have to come to my place to play. You have to promise me." Lei Xingfeng looked very sincere. He said, Of course. And Yadin said, "Like you, Ai, you can act." Lei Xingfeng was choked speechless. Yen Wu laughed and said, "Come with me. Hee, my place is more fun." Gulu drank a tube of medicine and felt much better. He looked at the distance and said, "We have to hurry. I don't know how long the old man can drag it out." Lei Xingfeng said, "Is Yi okay?" Gulu said, "Maybe we can't beat them, but escaping shouldn't be a problem." Arjo! After a few minutes of battle, both Lei Bao and Si Dano were shocked. Almost everything within 100 miles was destroyed. Whether it was houses, trees, or ordinary people or cultivators, everything was turned into ashes under the impact of their battle. Si Dano was very afraid of Thunderstorm. He thought that he had to kill him. He was too much of a threat. If Thunderstorm leveled up, and was also a sage with an ashen seal like him, then he had no chance of winning. He might even lose. He regretted it. If he had brought Sun Ruyu, then Thunderstorm would have been finished. He was irritated and increased the strength of his attacks. Thunderstorm dragged it out for a few minutes. At this point, he was starting to feel tired. After all, fighting a sage with an ashen seal was too much of a burden. He stopped fighting head-on and started to drag it out. It wasn't that Si Dano couldn't see through Lei Bao's tactics, but Lei Bao had a very slippery move, which was to rely on the power of lightning to teleport away from attacks. With a single bolt of lightning, he could retreat a few 100 meters away, leaving the battlefield in a few moments. If it wasn't for the fear that Si Dano would chase after Gulu and the others, Thunderstorm would have run away. He wasn't stupid enough to fight such a master. As Si Dano fought, he realized that something was wrong. Lei Bao was getting farther and farther away from him. It felt like the old man was trying to run away. He tried his best to pounce on Lei Bao, trying to tie him down. He believed that after a long battle, he would definitely be able to wear Lei Bao down. Exhausting the opponent's strength was also a method to deal damage. However, with Thunderstorm speed, Si Dano couldn't catch up at all. There was one reason for this, and that was because Thunderstorm had stored Dipper Serum in his body. It was a Dipper Serum with spirituality. As long as he completely refined it, his strength would skyrocket. He just didn't have the time to cultivate it. However, with the Dipper Serum in his body, his speed naturally increased, and he could teleport. Si Dano couldn't catch up to Thunderstorm a few times in a row. He was so angry that he yelled. Even someone as calm as him would lose his composure like this. If E. Dayton saw this, he would probably be scared stiff. Thunderstorm's long-range attacks were stronger than Sistano's. Bolts of lightning as thick as water buckets shot out, forcing Sistano to constantly change his position. Although these bolts of lightning couldn't threaten his life, they were extremely annoying to him. They made him tremble for a few seconds. Finally, Si Dano stopped. He suddenly smiled strangely and said, "Very well, I won't chase. Ha! I'll chase after your subordinates." He thought that Gulu and the others were Thunderstorm's subordinates. He didn't expect them to be friends. They were Thunderstorm's real weakness, especially with Lei Xingfeng. Chapter 83. Si Ano was very straightforward and chased in the direction that Gulu and the rest had retreated to. Thunderstorm was furious. He cursed, "Bastard," and chased after him. No matter what, he couldn't let Si Ano hurt Lei Xingfeng. After chasing for about a kilometer, Si Ano reacted. He suddenly turned and flew in another direction. Thunderstorm followed suit. He immediately understood that Si Ano was going to the nearest Luan spot. That was the best place to escape. It was also the only way to escape because after entering the ancient Luan passage through the Luan spot, you didn't know where you would end up. The entire ancient Luan passage was actually a huge network. Those with high abilities could go to faraway places, while those with low abilities could only go to nearby places. Of course, the ancient Luan passages, Luan spot wasn't something that just anyone could open. It required at least a great Luanine true master with 4 true ring bodies to open it. Those who didn't reach this level, even if they knew where the Luan spot was, they couldn't use it. Sistano flew extremely quickly, with Lei Bao madly chasing after him, occasionally shooting out bolts of lightning and fire. Because Thunderstorm's lightning attack speed was definitely one of the fastest every time he attacked, he would force Si Ano to stop, thus slowing him down. One of Lei Bao's attacks hit Stanos, causing him to pause for at least a few seconds. He was so angry that he turned around to look for Lei Bao to beat him up. At this time, Lei Bao dodged again. The two of them continued to fight like this for half a day before they finally arrived at their turn. From afar, they saw the Luan spot light up, the Luan spot activated. The ancient Luan passage had opened. Siano roared, "Stay!" He punched downwards. His target was the Luan node. With his strength, it was impossible to destroy the Luan node. The Luan node was built in ancient times, and its sturdiness had reached an unimaginable level. However, his punch could definitely break the ancient Luan passageway. The old man, Thunderstorm, didn't utter a word. He suddenly released a ball of lightning. He didn't hesitate to use a Little Dipper Thunder Serum. Although it was only a little, his heart ached to the extreme. Gulu and the rest who were standing on the Luan spot were shocked. They had already activated the Luan spot and were just a little bit away from entering the ancient Luan passage. Now that the Luan spot was attacked, the entire ancient Luan passage would be in chaos. Who knew what would happen? No cultivator on this continent would attack a Luan spot. The thunder plasma was just a little bit. After being released by the thunderstorm, its power reached an unimaginable level, and a loud explosion sounded. Stanos trembled all over. His punch landed on the thunder plasma. In that instant, all the hair on his body stood on end. He trembled all over and fell from the sky. If Thunderstorm hadn't completely refined the thunder plasma, this blow would have taken away half of his life. The shock waves from the two attacks still affected the Luan spot. As Stanos fell, the ancient Luan passage flashed, and the people on the Luan spot disappeared. Stanos regained control of his body before falling to the ground. He didn't know if he had broken the ancient Luan passage, but he knew in his heart that this should have a limited effect on these people. But he forgot that in this group, the others might not be affected as they were all true masters with 4 true ring bodies and above. But there was still a young mill wheel master mixed in. He was too weak, and the impact on him was huge. Lei Bao, of course, understood. Even though he was about to go crazy, he still controlled himself. After all, he had reached the level of a true heart-in master. He could control his emotions. He roared, "See, Dano, I'm not done with you. I won't let you go. I don't fucking believe that you don't have any subordinates. No family." With a thunderclap, he appeared a few hundred meters away. Amidst the continuous thunderclaps, he gradually disappeared into the horizon. Stanos smiled bitterly. This time he had really messed with someone incredible. As a true heart-in master with 8 true ring bodies, he could fight him to such an extent. If this person were to develop, who knows what level he would reach. Seeing him leave so cleanly, this person was definitely an extremely powerful veteran. With a hint of waning interest, Stanos slowly flew towards Stellar Night Fortress. When he arrived at Stellar Night Fortress, Dano started to look for E. Dayton, but he couldn't find E. Dayton even after looking around. He quickly grabbed a few practitioners who were wandering far away, and after some questioning, he received a terrifying piece of news. Thunderstorm actually captured E. Dayton. He knew that he was in big trouble. Thunderstorm didn't capture E. Dayton just for revenge, but also to understand his background and information. Although Stanos wasn't afraid of Thunderstorm's revenge, he had enough experts and enough power. But he was shocked by Thunderstorm's careful planning. This guy actually started planning for revenge so quickly. He immediately started searching, but Thunderstorm's strength was extremely high. Stanos didn't have any help to find such an expert. There was almost no hope of finding him. Lei Xingfeng's whole body was in pain. His temples were throbbing. He saw stars and silver stars rippling in front of his eyes. Slowly, he heard a shout. "He's awake! Big Father! Big Father, he's awake!" He forced his eyes open. There were still stars in front of him. After a while, he could see his surroundings clearly. There was a round reed mat ceiling. He heard the sound of water flowing. His body swayed with the sound of water. He immediately understood that he was on a boat. A skinny child came in. Behind him was a strong man. The child was holding a wooden bowl. He said, "Big father, he's awake." The strong man said, I see." He came to Lei Xingfeng's side and said, "Kid, you're awake. Eat something." The skinny child said, "Yeah, eat some porridge. You've been asleep for 4 days. I thought you wouldn't wake up." The strong man said, "Little Xian, don't talk nonsense. Come and feed this little brother porridge." As he spoke, he squatted down and helped Lei Xingfeng up. Little Xian held the wooden bowl and started feeding Lei Xingfeng the porridge. Lei Xingfeng asked, Where is this? Who are you?" He suddenly found that his throat was dry and hoarse. Not only was he hungry, but he also had no strength. He could only lean on the strong man's arm and drink the porridge bit by bit. It was a bowl of fish porridge. It tasted delicious. He felt much better after drinking a bowl. The strong man said, "This is Xinghang Lake. We're fishermen here. My surname is Zhou Xian. You can call me Uncle Zhou. This is my little nephew, Zhou Xian. He should be younger than you. You can call him Little Xian. Kid, what's your name? We found you on the sand by the lake." Zhou Xian said repeatedly, Yeah, half of your body was still in the water. Fortunately, your body was stuck on the reeds. Otherwise, you would have drowned." Lei Xingfeng said, Thank you for saving me. My surname is Lei Xingfeng." He had already seen that these two people were ordinary people, not practitioners. Uncle Zhou laughed. "How can I leave you in the lurch? You can rest well." Zhou Xian looked very happy and said, "I'll call you Brother Lei, okay?" Lei Xingfeng nodded. "Okay." He knew that this was a kid who did not have many friends. He was very excited to meet someone of similar age. Uncle Zhou said, "Little Xian, let your brother Lei continue to rest. When he's better, he'll play with you." Zhou Xian nodded. "I'll go catch some fish and make some soup for Brother Lei." Uncle Zhou smiled and nodded. The two of them left the cabin. Lei Xingfeng lay down again. His mind was still in a mess. He needed time to think. He knew that this was a big problem. Lei Xingfeng did not know how he came here. He also did not know why he was separated from Yan Wu and the rest. He could only remember standing on the Luan Point. He could not remember anything after that. The only thing he could be sure of was that this was not Shirong Nation. He didn't ask Uncle Zhou what continent this was. To a fisherman, the places he was familiar with wouldn't surpass the places he fished. Xian Feng was very clear about this. This place wasn't like his previous world, where the internet was dense and there were all sorts of communication methods that allowed one to quickly understand what was happening in the world. This place was more like the ancient world, where a normal person was able to understand everything within 100 li radius. It was already considered to be a jack of all trades. In Tiger Cliff Castle, Lei Xingfeng already understood this principle. That was why he did not ask. Sighing to himself, Lei Xingfeng decided to recuperate before finding Yi and his sister. He took out a tube of medicine from his hidden Luan space. It was given by Aslan. It was a green medicine that could heal most injuries. He drank it in one gulp. A warm feeling quickly rose from his chest. In an instant, he felt relaxed. This medicine was most useful for such injuries. In half a day, he would be completely healed. Waking up in the morning, Lei Xingfeng climbed out of the cabin. This cabin was low and narrow. After climbing out of the cabin, he saw the long bow of the ship. Uncle Zhou was lighting a fire, and Zhou Xian was killing fish. The fish were only as thick as a thumb and about a foot long. This fish looked like a snake, but did not have any color. It was translucent, and one could clearly see the bones in the fish. The skull could also be seen clearly. Lei Xingfeng squatted down and said, "Good morning. What fish is this? It's so weird." Seeing Lei Xingfeng come over, Zhou Xian was instantly happy. He said, "This is a bright fish. It's best used to make soup." There were a total of 8 bright fish. Uncle Zhou said. Little Xian worked the whole night just for these few bright fish. He said he wanted to give Brother Lei a good taste. Lei Xingfeng said, "Is this fish hard to catch?" He realized that the more remote a place was, the more enthusiastic the people were when they met strangers. It was like this in Tiger Cliff Castle. He had only been in this world for 16 years. To be precise, he was 17 years old. This time it was the same. He was very touched. Chapter 84. Uncle Zhou said, "It's very difficult. This fish can only be caught with a special bait." Zhou Xian had already carefully prepared the bright fish and placed it into the boiling water. He covered the pot with the lid and said with a smile, "Brother Lei, it will be ready in a while. Bright fish is the easiest to cook. Just now, I begged eldest father to pick a few sprouts of Lu Si grass. Bright fish soup will only be truly delicious if it has Lu Si grass." Xian Feng looked at the small wooden basin beside him and saw some fresh green plants that had already been washed clean. These were all things he didn't recognize, whether it was the fish or the plants. They were all things he had never seen before. It was obvious that these were local specialties. He thanked her again. "Thank you, little Xian." Zhou Xian said, "Brother Lei, you're welcome. We don't have anything good here. It's just some fresh water." When the water boiled, the bright fish had already melted in the water. Zhou Xian threw away the fish bones, but there was nothing in the soup. It was a pot of white soup, but there was a strong smell of fresh fish. Zhou Xian sprinkled the sprouts of Lu Si grass. He stirred the soup with a wooden spoon and said, "Okay, eldest father, let's eat." Uncle Zhou opened the lid of a small wooden bucket. There was a wooden bucket filled with steamed rice. There was also a big bowl full of smoked fish. The staple food here was fish and rice. This place was rich in rice. Other than the porridge he ate yesterday, this was the first time Lei Xingfeng ate fresh rice in this world. He was very touched, although this rice was very different from the rice in his previous world. For example, the rice grains were bigger and light green in color. The taste was also much better than the rice in his previous world. It was extremely sweet and fragrant. Xian Feng's meal, this bucket of rice, he had eaten more than half of it, causing Uncle Zhou and Zhou Xian to be dumbstruck. This man was too good at eating. Not only was the rice delicious, the smoked fish was also very delicious. As for the bright fish soup, Lei Xingfeng almost ate the wooden bowl. Whether it was in this life or his previous life, he had never tasted such delicious fish soup. Based on Lei Xingfeng's appetite, this bit of rice and fish was only enough to fill his stomach. When he was in Tiger Cliff Castle, he ate meat most of the time. He ate very little grain and relied on the meat provided by various wild beasts to fill his stomach. After all, he was a practitioner and not a normal person. Uncle Zhou smiled bitterly as he looked at Rice Bucket. This was today's food. Fish could be caught, but rice had to be bought at the market. Generally, fishermen would use various kinds of fish to exchange for rice. Rice was very expensive. Generally, 7 to 8 caddies of fish could be exchanged for 1 caddy of rice. Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Don't worry, eldest father. I'll catch more fish." Brother Lei likes to eat rice, so we can exchange for more rice. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Is there a place to buy rice here?" Uncle Zhou said, "Yes, there is a big market here. Almost every day, a large number of fishermen go there to trade. Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Okay, let's go to the market. I'll buy some rice." Zhou Xian asked suspiciously, "Brother Lei, you don't have any money on you. How are you going to buy rice?" He was the one who saved Lei Xingfeng on the boat. Of course, he knew that other than a set of clothes, Lei Xingfeng didn't bring anything. Moreover, his clothes were tattered and torn to pieces. He was still wearing his eldest father's clothes. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Don't worry, I have a way." Zhou Xian was young, about 13 or 14 years old. His physique was also small, and he was a typical normal person. However, he wasn't stupid and said, "What can you do?" "I'll go catch more fish to trade." He was good at fishing. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Really, I have a way. Little Xian, you have to believe me. I won't lie." Uncle Zhou said, "Okay, we're going to the market. There's not much salt left. We're going to exchange for some salt." The fishermen here usually went to the market to exchange for a few things. One was salt, one was rice, and the other was clothes and very few daily necessities. Their lives were very simple. It was all about survival, and they didn't have any other thoughts. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Uncle Zhou, where is your home?" Uncle Zhou said, "Here, on the boat. My home is this boat. During the rainy season, we will gather at the market, but we still live on the boat." Zhou Xian laughed out loud. He felt that this question was really funny. The fisherman's home had always been on the boat. There was very little land here, only lakes and swamps. For the fishermen here, a boat was a family. Because of Uncle Zhou's special circumstances, he lived alone with his little nephew. The little guy's parents had already passed away. In this world, Uncle Zhou was his family. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "I used to live in the mountains. This is the first time I'm on a boat." Uncle Zhou said, "That's impossible. There are lakes for hundreds of miles here. There have never been any mountains." Zhou Xian was very interested and said, "Mountains, is it fun?" Lei Xingfeng said, "It's different from here. There are a lot of beasts, very powerful beasts, and barbarians." Zhou Xian said, "Barbarians? What are they? Are they people?" Lei Xingfeng said, "You don't have barbarians here." Zhou Xian shook his head and said, "I've never heard of them." Lei Xingfeng said, "That's not bad. There are no barbarians. Hee, barbarians are also considered people, but they are more barbaric. They eat anything, including humans." Zhou Xian opened his mouth wide and said in horror, "Eat humans? Wow, big uncle, did you hear that? Barbarians eat humans." After a simple conversation with Uncle Zhou and Zhou Xian, Lei Xingfeng knew that this was a relatively peaceful area. There were not too many wars, and there were not too many dangerous beasts. This was a rare paradise, very suitable for a simple life. In the end, Uncle Zhou was persuaded by Lei Xingfeng. He went back to the stern, picked up the oars, and began to row. Zhou Xian also became busy. He put the dried lotus seeds into a cloth bag and took out the dried fish from the cabin to organize them. Dried fish could also be exchanged for things. He also had a small cloth bag with jingling sounds coming from it. This was his treasure. There were dozens of copper rings inside, and they were specially used to buy things that couldn't be exchanged for. At noon the next day, the boat arrived at the market. It was a building on the water. From afar, it looked very spectacular. There were all kinds of wooden houses of uneven heights. They were all built on the water. Thick logs were inserted into the bottom of the lake. The bottom of the lake was not deep, at most 3 to 4 meters. The houses were connected to each other with wooden boards. The streets were the lake, and the means of transportation were all kinds of boats. The climate here was hot, and the fishermen were usually bare-chested. They wore a pair of shorts and tied a fish basket around their waist. They were barefoot, and they usually had weapons like harpoons in their hands. There were also a few tattoos on their bodies. As they approached the market, they saw countless small boats gathering from all directions and rowing towards the market. This place gave Lei Xingfeng a peaceful atmosphere. It was a good place to cultivate. He had already made up his mind to advance to a sage mill wheel with one true ring body here. Only then would it be time to go on the road. After seeing real battles, he was very clear that it was very dangerous for a mill wheel master to travel outside. He now had a lot of resources, enough for him to cultivate. Lei Xingfeng was also bare-chested. He also wore linen shorts, but he did not have a fish basket around his waist. He also did not have a harpoon in his hands. He carried a cloth bag with dried lotus seeds. This was a type of medicine that cultivators needed. This kind of lotus seed was different from the ones he had seen in his previous life. It was a light red color and was a local specialty, fire lotus seed. It was considered good if a lotus on the lake could produce a few kilograms of these fire lotus seed. This bag of fire lotus seed took Zhou Xian more than 10 days to collect. After peeling and drying them, he only got a few kilograms. According to Zhou Xian, these fire lotus seed could be exchanged for a few silver rings. Because of the glutton Lei Xingfeng, Zhou Xian was forced to take out his treasures to exchange for rice. A kilogram of fire lotus seed could be exchanged for 100 kilograms of rice. That was why he let Lei Xingfeng carry it. Uncle Zhou carried a few hundred kilograms of dried fish and walked up the gangplank. In Zhou Xian's fish basket, there were dozens of bright fish. These things were also very valuable. The three of them walked on the wooden plank in front of the wooden house and soon arrived at a rice shop. Most of the people here liked to barter gold rings, silver rings, and copper rings. Most of the fishermen had copper rings. Only a few silver rings were in circulation. Gold rings were almost impossible to see. Only the shops used gold rings. Uncle Zhou put down the dried fish and said, "Old shopkeeper, I'm here." An old man was sitting on a deck chair. He held a palm leaf fan in his hand and gently fanned himself. He smiled and said, "Little Zhou, using dried fish to exchange for rice again?" Uncle Zhou smiled and said, "Yes, old shopkeeper. How's business recently?" The two of them seemed to be very familiar with each other. The old man sat up and forcefully patted the palm leaf fan and said, "Business hasn't been very good recently. I have too many dried fish here. You also know that the rainy season is coming. The dried fish can't be stored. They will be damp and moldy. The fleet also won't come to collect them." Sigh. He sighed and said, "Do you have anything else? Dried fish can't be exchanged for too much rice." Zhou Xian said, "I have some bright fish here and some fire lotus seeds." Lei Xingfeng looked coldly at the side. He noticed that the old shopkeeper's eyes were constantly rolling. He knew that this guy was not telling the truth. The old shopkeeper said, "Well, fire lotus seeds are okay. How many do you have?" Zhou Xian said, 3 to 5 kilograms. The old shopkeeper said, 1 kilogram for 50 kilograms of rice. How about it? Recently, the price of fire lotus seeds has dropped. Zhou Xian's face suddenly turned bitter. He was hoping that the fire lotus seeds could be exchanged for more rice. He didn't expect that the price would drop by half. Lei Xingfeng couldn't stand it anymore. He stepped forward and said, "How much is 1 kilogram of rice here?" The old shopkeeper said, "Money? Do you have money?" It wasn't that he looked down on fishermen, but fishermen rarely used money to buy rice. Chapter 85. Lei Xingfeng asked, "How much for a caddy?" The old shopkeeper looked at the young man in front of him. This was a slender young man with a young face, but He had a strange sense of maturity, giving people a very steady feeling. There was a vague aura around him that did not seem like a fisherman at all. He could not help but say, "A copper ring is a caddy, 10 copper rings, and 11 caddies. You can also use silver rings. 1 silver ring is also 11 caddies." Lei Xingfeng knew that the money here was based on a decimal system. 10 copper rings was 1 silver ring, 10 silver rings was 1 gold ring. And the money in this continent was very stable. Normal people would use silver rings at most, and most of them would use copper rings as their main currency. Of course, most of the normal people still bartered. Zhou Xian said softly, "Lei Gij, I brought money." Lei Xingfeng stopped him from continuing. In Stellar Night Fortress, he had received many gold rings, most of which were given to Lei Xianyao, but there were a few bags of gold rings that were kept in the hidden Luan space, originally intended for Lei Xianyao, but he forgot about it. For them, gold rings were nothing. With a flip of his hand, a leather bag appeared in Lei Xingfeng's hand. This bag was very delicately made, light brown leather with an elastic strap at the mouth. He reached out and grabbed a handful of gold rings from the bag. With a ding-dang sound, 6 or 7 gold rings were placed on the counter. With a flip of his wrist, the bag disappeared. The old shopkeeper's eyes suddenly became round. He was not an ignorant fisherman. He knew that only practitioners had such methods. Looking at Lei Xingfeng again, his eyes were only filled with respect, no longer arrogant. He said in surprise, "Gold rings. This, no problem. 1 gold ring can buy 110 caddies of rice." Even though Uncle Zhou was a fisherman, he was not stupid. He said, "Old shopkeeper, you sold it too high." The old shopkeeper's expression did not change. He had indeed sold it at a high price, but this was also normal. He had sold it at a normal ratio. In fact, the actual value of a gold ring was quite high. In the market, a gold ring could not only be exchanged for 10 silver rings, but also for 11 silver rings and a few copper rings. Because gold rings were easier to carry around, it was the favorite of those big merchants. "All right, how much do you want?" Uncle Zhou said, "A golden hoop and 10 caddies of rice." The old shopkeeper didn't say much this time. He simply nodded and said, "Okay, let's do it this way. 1 gold hoop and 120 caddies of rice. How much do you want?" Lei Xingfeng said, "That's all." He pointed at the gold rings on the counter. The old shopkeeper counted and said, 7 golden rings and 840 kilograms of rice. Is that correct?" Lei Xingfeng nodded. "That's right." Zhou Xian was still counting with his fingers, but he still couldn't figure it out. Uncle Zhou patted him and laughed. "Stop counting. You can't figure it out." Lei Xingfeng said, "Leave the rice in the shop first. When we leave, we'll come and get it." The old shopkeeper nodded and said, "All right, I'll send a waiter to help you board the ship." When they left, Uncle Zhou specially said, "Old shopkeeper, you have to give us new rice. You don't have to take out the old rice. This rice was bought with gold rings." The old shopkeeper laughed. "Don't worry, I'll give you the best rice." As soon as they left, Zhou Xian couldn't help but ask, "Brother Lei, where did you put that bag of money? Why can't I see it?" Uncle Zhou knew a little more. He was a little reserved and asked, "Brother Lei, are you a Luan master?" Lei Xingfeng laughed. "Uncle, if I'm a Luan master, will you ignore me?" He knew that a practitioner would give normal people pressure. He didn't have a high and mighty mentality. To normal people, he was very gentle, especially to Uncle Zhou and Zhou Xian. The two of them could be considered as his saviors. He didn't need to be arrogant. Uncle Zhou said, "Of course not. You're really a Luan master?" He still couldn't believe it. Lei Xingfeng said, "And really? But I'm going to stay here for a while. Uncle, you won't chase me away, right?" Zhou Xian's mouth was wide open. After a while, he said in surprise, "Wah, Luan master, you're really amazing. Wah, Uncle Zhou hurriedly pulled Zhou Xian and said, "Little Xian, lower your voice. Don't shout. Hee, Brother Lei, feel free to stay. Hee, I'm just afraid that our place is too shabby and won't treat you well." Normal people would come in contact with small Luan masters and 100 Luan masters. They would call practitioners Luan masters. As for real people, they would never come in contact with them. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference in levels. As long as it was a Luan master, they would be very respectful. Lei Xingfeng said, "Little Xian, there's nothing to be surprised about. Don't you have any Luan masters here?" Zhou Xian said, "Yes, we do. We have Luan masters here. This water stronghold has Luan masters guarding it, but they all live in the best houses in the water stronghold. They are worshipped by the shopkeepers. They won't be like us, needing to live in the lake." Lei Xingfeng didn't want to dwell on this topic and said, "Is there anything else you want to buy?" Hee, this time it's my treat. Buy whatever you want." Uncle Zhou said, "I'll sell this bag of dried fish." Hee, let's exchange it for some salt." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Okay, let's go together." The three of them walked along the wooden street and soon arrived at a fish store. The price of dried fish was extremely cheap. 1 copper ring was 4 jeans of dried fish. Nearly 400 jeans of dried fish could be exchanged for less than 100 copper rings, which was close to a golden ring. They directly exchanged 10 jeans of coarse salt and 3 jeans of fine salt at the fish store. They had already spent most of their money. They also exchanged for some seasonings for cooking and a few pots. Lei Xingfeng took the initiative to buy them because they didn't have enough money. They bought a lot of things, including some clothes, bedding, and a fishing net. This was what Uncle Zhou had always wanted, but it was too expensive. This time, Lei Xingfeng also paid for it. With a fishing net, the harvest was completely different. In the past, they had always used a thick fishing line with a string of hooks. They couldn't catch many fish, but most of the fish were caught by Zhou Xian in the water. They also bought some liquor at the market. Almost all the fishermen liked this kind of liquor, but it was expensive. Most of the fishermen drank home-brewed rice wine. Only when they caught a lot of fish would they exchange for some liquor. This time, Lei Xingfeng bought 2 big jars of liquor at one go. Both jars were 20 pounds each, and each jar was worth 2 gold rings. These 2 jars of liquor made Uncle Zhou smile from ear to ear. Usually, he would be very happy if he could exchange for 1 pound of liquor. Not only could the liquor be used to entertain guests, but it could also be drunk. It could also be made into medicinal liquor. It could be said to be the treasure of the fishermen. According to Lei Xingfeng's temper, he even wanted to buy a new boat for Uncle Zhou, but Uncle Zhou refused no matter what. He already felt that this kind of spending was too much. They were busy until the evening. Only then did the 3 of them return to the boat and organize the things they bought today. Uncle Zhou was cooking at the bow of the boat and preparing dinner. The boat stopped at the wooden pier outside the market. The row of fishermen on the boats had all returned at this time. The entire pier was very lively. There were many small vendors selling all kinds of snacks. The pier was very noisy, and there were many children running around. They often surrounded the small vendors, biting their fingers and looking at all kinds of snacks with greedy eyes. Of course, they didn't have the money to buy them. Among the peddlers, the ones that were most popular with children were the ones that sold sugar. Every child's eyes were filled with desire, but the price of sugar was extremely expensive. A copper ring could only buy a small bag of sugar. Very few fishermen were willing to spend this kind of money, but the children of the fishermen often had their own ways. For example, there was a child who used the bright fish he caught to exchange for a small bag of sugar. This made all the other children salivate. Lei Xingfeng sat at the bow of the boat and looked at the lively pier. At this moment, his heart was very calm. A large wooden bucket of rice, a jar of boiled fish, a basin of salted white prawns, and a small plate of salted dried radish. In addition, there were 3 bowls of strong liquor. The smell of the liquor floated, and it immediately attracted an old man on the boat next door. He smiled and said, "Boss Joe, drink." The so-called boss was a form of address for the captain of the boat. It was a form of respect, and it represented a person who could control a boat. Uncle Joe said, "Jean Lauda, are you hungry? Ha, come and drink with me." The relationship between fishermen was good. Moreover, they were forthright and rarely coy. If they liked something, they would come. There was no need to be polite. Jean Lauda carried a jar and stepped over. He said, "I hunted a mallard duck and stewed it for a long time. The heat is just right." He put down the jar and picked up a wooden bowl. He drank a mouthful of the strong liquor and exhaled. He praised, "Good liquor." "Ha, Boss Joe, you're rich. You actually drank such good liquor." The two were very familiar. Uncle Joe said, "Jean Lauda, what's the latest news?" "I just came back today." Jean Lauda laughed. "There is news." "Ha! You know, the 4th son of the Tian family. They went hunting for a scaly crocodile a few days ago. I heard that they even invited a loon master. I don't know if they succeeded." Uncle Joe was shocked. "Scaly crocodile? They are too daring. This thing is vicious. If they are not careful, the boat will be destroyed." Lei Xingfeng curiously asked, "What is a scaly crocodile?" Uncle Joe said, "It's a very ferocious fish that eats people." Jean Lauda said, "This little brother looks unfamiliar. Boss Joe, is he your relative?" Uncle Joe vaguely replied. Lei Xingfeng had already told him to hide that he was a loon master, so he did not dare to speak carelessly. Jean Lauda laughed. "Little brother, it seems like you are not from here. The scaly crocodile is very famous." He then began to boast about the scaly crocodile. The scaly crocodile was similar to a crocodile. However, its hind limbs had turned into fins, and its front limbs had sharp claws. It had a long mouth with blade-like teeth. Its body was about 6 meters long. An adult scaly crocodile could easily destroy a small wooden boat. Normal fishermen would never dare to provoke the scaly crocodile. Chapter 86. However, every part of the scaly crocodile was a treasure. An adult scaly crocodile was worth at least 300 to 400 gold rings. The gall bladder of the scaly crocodile was a kind of medicine for cultivators. It could be used to make medicine, so there were still fishermen who would take the risk. Boss Joe said, "They won't go to Damo Bay, right? That's a dangerous place." Jean Lauda smiled and said, "It's Damo Bay. That's the place with the most scaly crocodile." Zhou Xian whispered, "That's courting death." Jean Lauda gave him a light slap and said, "Little guy, don't talk nonsense." Zhou Xian was not convinced. He muttered, "The 4th brother of the Tian family is an unreliable guy." The 4 of them ate and drank. Lei Xingfeng was busy eating prawns. He was not very interested in fish in his previous life, but he liked prawns very much. Therefore, when he saw the big white prawns in salt water, it was to his liking. He ate like crazy. As for the liquor, he only took a sip. The taste of the liquor was very ordinary. It was just a little stronger. Jean Lauda and Uncle Joe drank very slowly. It was not that they could not hold their liquor, but that they could not bear to drink too much. Jean Lauda came over just to drink some liquor. He was embarrassed to drink to his full capacity. If he drank to his full capacity, he would not be able to drink until he was satisfied with at least 2 to 3 caddies of liquor. Zhou Xian and Lei Xingfeng were the same. They only took a sip. Both of them liked to eat more. Suddenly, there was a commotion. The children rushed to the dock and ran to the other side. Zhou Xian was still a child after all. When he saw the commotion, he could not help but run out. He said, "Brother Lei, go take a look." Lei Xingfeng was also almost done eating. He used the lake water to wash his hands before jumping onto the dock and following the group of children. A few wooden boats sailed over, and one of them was particularly large. It was about 20 meters long and had 3 large sails. However, this was not the reason for the commotion. What caused the commotion was the huge fish that was fastened to the side of the boat. The fish was at least 8 or 9 meters long, which was a little longer than the small boat beside it. Someone said, "Oh my God, that's a scaly crocodile." That's the 4th brother of the Tian family. The one standing at the bow of the boat is the 4th brother of the Tian family. This guy is going to be rich. Hey, who are the people beside the 4th brother of the Tian family? Who are those people? Don't talk, that's a loon master. Many fishermen also came over and opened their eyes. There were a total of 4 small boats and 1 big boat. Very quickly, they reached the dock. Some people got off the boats and used large steel hooks to pin the scaly crocodile. They used their strength to drag it up the wooden dock. The dock let out a creaking sound. That thing was too heavy. The dock here could not bear such a heavy load. Some fishermen shouted, "Too heavy, too heavy, the dock is going to collapse." The scaly crocodile's huge tail was dragged up the dock. Its body was still submerged in the water, but it could no longer be dragged up the dock. That would really crush the wooden dock. The children curiously gathered around. Zhou Xian was no exception. He was very close and curiously stretched out his hand to touch the scales of the scaly crocodile. Lei Xingfeng stood not far away. It was also his first time seeing such a huge aquatic fish. He was not that surprised. The creatures in this world were different from the creatures in his previous world. However, he was able to find similarities. Some things were not too different. For example, there were pigs, cows, sheep, horses, chickens, ducks, hunting dogs, and wild wolves. However, there were many more creatures that he did not know about. Lei Xingfeng treated this scaly crocodile as a huge crocodile. The only thing that made him curious was the color of the scaly crocodile's body. Those were dark blue scales. Under the light of the afterglow, it was exceptionally beautiful. Lei Xingfeng turned around and walked back. Just as he took a step, he heard a pa-pa sound behind him. He was very familiar with that sound. It was the crisp sound of a slap followed by a cry of pain. Hearing this sound, Lei Xingfeng's expression changed. He quickly turned around and saw Zhou Xian covering his face. His eyes were filled with tears as he fearfully looked at a young man. Behind that young man stood a beautiful woman in her 20s. In that instant, Lei Xingfeng felt as if he was slapped in the face. His nature was similar to Thunderstorm. He was an extremely protective person. Although Zhou Xian was a child, not only did he save his life, but he was also very sensible and well-behaved. He called Lei Xingfeng Big Brother Lei. Even if he was an ordinary person, Lei Xingfeng still treated him as his own little brother. He did not know why Zhou Xian was slapped, but he knew. A wave of anger instantly rushed to his head. "Bastard, who let you touch the miss?" The young man scolded. Lei Xingfeng walked over step by step. At this moment, he had the urge to kill. It was not that he liked to kill, but it was a natural consequence of cultivating a thunder attribute cultivation method. Once he was angry, his first thought was to kill. Moreover, it was an extremely impulsive desire to kill. If he did not kill, it would not be enough to quell his anger. Zhou Xian was beaten silly. He had lived with his eldest father since he was young and had never been beaten. In addition, he rarely interacted with others. Even if he did, those people were his eldest father's friends and were very friendly to him. He had never seen such an evil person. He did not understand why he was beaten. He just stared blankly at that person. The young man was even more furious. He raised his hand and slapped again. Pa! Everyone looked over, and only then did they realize that the young man was covering his face and retreating. A young man was standing in front of Zhou Xian. Following that, the young man took a step forward and slapped him again. After 9 consecutive slaps, the young man finally stopped. Zhou Xian was also scared silly. He did not think that Lei Xingfeng would come out and slap that person so many times. He now knew that slaps were very painful. The young man was about to go crazy. He had never been beaten so ruthlessly before. His face was about to be smashed. When Lei Xingfeng finally stopped, he could no longer speak. He covered his face and kept howling. No one knew what he was howling about. Heavens! That is the son of the Tian family's 4th son, Tian Dabing. He is a Luan master. I wonder which family that young man is from. It seems that Zhou Tong's little nephew was beaten. That was why that young man hit him. Outrageous! An adult bullying a child. Sure, lower your voice. Tian Dabing is very overbearing. Be careful that he doesn't find trouble with you. The surrounding fishermen discussed. Tian Dabing finally caught his breath. He jumped up and shouted, "You dare hit me?" Pa! 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 Another 3 slaps. Tian Dabing's head was in a mess. Lei Xingfeng's anger had not dissipated. Hearing that he still dared to speak, he went up and slapped him 3 more times. He said indifferently, "I will hit you. What else can you do?" Slaps couldn't kill people. Xianfeng had already tried his best to control himself. He didn't use his Lumli to hit him. He only used a bit of strength and didn't use his full strength. If he did, his head would have exploded. Dong! Dong! 2 sounds were heard. 2 people jumped down from the boat. One was a middle-aged man, and the other was a young man. The 2 ran to Tian Dabing. The middle-aged man helped Tian Dabing up and said anxiously, Dabing, what happened? Are you hurt? Are you hurt?" Tian Dabing's nose and mouth were bleeding nonstop. His face was already swollen. He could not speak clearly. "Father, he hit me." The Tian family's 4th son's eyes were red. He said, "Who are you? How dare you hit my son?" Lei Xingfeng was really domineering. He did not say anything. He went up and kicked the father and son to the ground. He said, "Learn from you. You dare to hit my little brother. Get ready to be beaten." The young man said, "Kid, you are too arrogant." Lei Xingfeng said, indifferently, "Apologize to my little brother. I will let it go this time. I will not ask what caused it, but if you dare to hit my little brother, you must pay the price." At this moment, he did not want to be reasonable. When dealing with unreasonable people, you must be more unreasonable than them. Otherwise, there was no way to solve the problem. The young man's face showed a trace of malevolence. He said, Which sect are you from?" He was sure that a normal person would not dare to be so arrogant. Only practitioners would be so overbearing. Lei Xingfeng said, "So what if I am a normal person? So what if I am a Luan master?" Without waiting for the young man to speak, another middle-aged man jumped off the wooden boat. He came in front of Lei Xingfeng and said, "Little guy, you." He slightly probed and could not help but show a bewildered expression. Zhou Xian quickly walked up and squatted beside Zhou Xian. He said, "Little Xian, why did he hit you?" Zhou Xian said with grievance, "I was just curious and touched the scaly crocodile. He hit me." He could not figure out why he was hit. Tian Dabing said, "He stepped on Abao's foot. I hit him." Bao was the girl who did not speak. That middle-aged man could feel that Lei Xingfeng was different, but he could not know more. He was a Wan Luan Shi, Tian Dabing's master. His disciple was hit. How could a master sit still? After all, he was different from the young man. He was much more cautious. He first probed Lei Xingfeng's strength, so he did not make a move. But the result of his probing made him bewildered because he felt that Lei Xingfeng was a bit unfathomable. The middle-aged man could not understand. This was only a young man, at most 17 or 18 years old. He did not look like he was an adult. No matter how strong he was, he had only been a practitioner. How strong could he be? Lei Xingfeng coldly looked over. The middle-aged man, the young man beside him, the young woman called Bao, and Tian Dabing should all be practitioners. But he clearly knew that the strongest should be the middle-aged man. He was only a Wan Luan Shi, and they were all low-level practitioners. He had seen too many true masters, but he did not feel anything towards a Wan Luan Shi. Furthermore, he was now a mill-wheel master. Tian Dabing shouted, "Master, senior brother, avenge me, kill him." The surrounding fishermen could not help but take a step back. Luan masters killed people, especially normal people. In this kind of place, there was no place to seek redress. If they died, then they died. So normal people were really afraid of practitioners. Hearing Tian Dabing shout for revenge, they all felt a chill in their hearts. It was just a little conflict, and they were going to kill. Chapter 87. When Tian Dabing shouted that he would be killed, the atmosphere at the pier changed completely. Uncle Zhou Tong hugged Zhou Xian and stood up. With a pale face, he said, "They're all children. How much hatred do you have to kill?" Tian family's fourth master. Tian family's fourth master supported Tian Dabing and gritted his teeth. "Kill? I'll kill your whole family." The middle-aged man didn't make a move. "What a joke. Do you think you'll kill them just because you say so?" He said, "Tian family's fourth master, bring Dabing to the side. I'll handle this." He was a practitioner and not a normal person. His knowledge was much greater than Tian family's fourth master. In this world, it was very dangerous. If one wasn't careful, they could lose their lives. He couldn't see through Lei Xingfeng, so he didn't dare to make a move. Tian family's fourth master was stunned. He didn't think that Tian Dabing's master would say this, but he definitely didn't dare to offend this middle-aged man. His face turned red as he supported Tian Dabing to the side. Tian Dabing said unwillingly, "Master." The middle-aged man said, "You shut up." Tian Dabing was completely stunned. He couldn't understand why his master would scold him, but he didn't dare to continue. He wasn't even 100 Luan master. After training for 2 years, he had at most 60 Lunli. He was slightly stronger than a normal person. If a barbarian came, he would probably be beaten to a pulp. The fishermen here were too different from the hunters in Tiger Cliff Castle, where Lei Xingfeng lived before. If a hunter came, these fishermen would be no match for him. Of course, if they went into the water, it would be hard to say who would win. The middle-aged man came in front of Lei Xingfeng and said, "Zhonggang Wan Luan Shi." Without a choice, he could only follow the rules of the Luan masters to test Xian Feng, who told him to not be able to find out Xian Feng's background without knowing his background. He didn't dare to take the next step. Lei Xingfeng sighed. He knew that if he couldn't intimidate the other party, he wouldn't care. However, Uncle Zhou Tong and little brother Zhou Xian would be in danger. He couldn't let his saviors be in danger. Lei Xingfeng, mill-wheel engineer. Zhonggang was so scared that his legs went soft, and he almost fell to the ground. He was the strongest Luan master in this area, and this young man was actually a mill-wheel master. In that instant, Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. With his experience, to be able to become a mill wheel master at the age of 16 or 17, all of them had heaven-defying talent and should also have a strong background and possibly an extremely powerful master. None of these were people that he could afford to offend. Zhonggung couldn't help but wipe his sweat. He was glad that he was mature and prudent and didn't dare to act recklessly. As for Tian Dabing, he was already paralyzed on the ground. Tian family's fourth brother couldn't even hold him up. He knew in his heart that his master was Wan Luanshi, but this young man was even stronger than his master. He was actually a mill wheel master. This was too scary. How was he supposed to live? He had been training for almost 4 years and hadn't even reached 100 Luan master. No wonder his master didn't like him. Zhonggung said, He really wanted to ask, why did a mill wheel master come to a small place like mine? However, he immediately felt that it was inappropriate and said, let me introduce you. This is my first disciple, Wu Zhan, 100 Luan master, about to advance to 1,000 Luan master. This is my second disciple, Han Xiaobao, about to advance to 100 Luan master. And that is my disciple in name, Tian Dabing, a local. Since he couldn't offend him, then he would try to get closer to him. Zhonggung was also very experienced. He said to Tian Dabing sternly, Dabing, go apologize. Tian Dabing saw his master's stern gaze and knew that he couldn't take revenge this time. He didn't know that his master was trying to save him. He was extremely angry and couldn't help but show it. Zhonggung saw it very clearly. In his heart, he had already treated him as an outsider. At most, he would only be a disciple in name, and would never be a real disciple. This person's heart was too narrow. He couldn't accomplish anything, and would only cause trouble. Zhonggung said indifferently, if you don't want to apologize, then I won't have you as a disciple in name. Tian Dabing didn't understand the ways of the world, but his father did. Hearing Zhonggung's words, he broke out in cold sweat. Abandoning the Tian family like this? What a joke! Without Zhonggung's support, his Tian family would be finished very quickly. They had offended too many people in the past. If it wasn't for Zhonggung's support, the Tian family would have been finished long ago. Tian Dabing looked at his father in disbelief. He never thought that his father would slap him. The Tian family's fourth son gritted his teeth and said, why aren't you apologizing? He whispered, hurry up, you're a dead man. You stupid. After a while, Lei Xingfeng's anger had already subsided. After some reflection, he couldn't help but feel a little cold. When he was angry, the first thought that came to his mind was to kill. He really didn't have any other thoughts. He didn't have any thoughts of understanding the situation or solving the problem. The only thought was to kill. Fortunately, he still had a trace of reason. That was the idea that remained in the depths of his mind from his previous life. That was why he chose to slap Tian Dabing's mouth to vent his anger. Tian Dabing was about to cry. Not only was his master forcing him to apologize, but his father was also beginning to force him. He cried miserably and said to Lei Xingfeng, I'm sorry. As one of the main characters this time, Zhou Xian was hiding behind Zhou Tong. The series of changes had already left him dumbfounded and dazzled. He couldn't understand the situation at all. The only thing he knew was that Lei Xingfeng had stood up for him and ruthlessly beat up the other party. In his little heart, he immediately set up Lei Xingfeng as his idol. That feeling was great. The feeling of having someone protecting him made him very happy. Lei Xingfeng said indifferently, don't apologize to me, apologize to my little brother. He reached out and pulled Zhou Xian out from behind Zhou Tong. Tian Dabing was so angry that his hands were trembling. However, he didn't dare to go against his master and father's words. He could only feel wronged and apologize again. Zhou Xian was still a child. After hearing the apology, he didn't pursue the matter. In fact, he was also very afraid. He never thought that he would be beaten up for no reason. He also didn't understand why he was beaten up. Lei Xingfeng heard the process and understood. The reason why Tian Dabing beat up Zhou Xian was to show that he cared about the girl called Han Xiaobao, or to show that he had the ability to look down on everything in this place. Zhou Xian accidentally stepped on Han Xiaobao. This was a very good reason. It was a very childish performance. This time, not only did he lose face, but he also lost everything. Lei Xingfeng didn't want to continue arguing. It was fine if he beat him up, but was he really going to kill him over such a small matter? He nodded and said, "If that's the case, then forget it. Let's go. Let's go back." How could Zhong Gang let Lei Xingfeng leave? A mill wheel master had appeared in his territory. If it was just a mill wheel master, then so be it. It wasn't like he hadn't seen one before. However, for a mill wheel master, a 16 or 17-year-old mill wheel master, he didn't dare think too much about the power behind him. If something happened to this little guy here, just as he thought of this, his back was drenched in cold sweat. He knew why Lei Xingfeng had appeared here, but he also knew that Lei Xingfeng absolutely couldn't have anything happen to him in his territory. Lei. Zhong Gang didn't know how to call Lei Xingfeng. If he called him by name, then it would be too disrespectful. If he called him senior, then Lei Xingfeng was still a youth. He was stumped. Lei Xingfeng was a very good person in normal times. He said, "Call me a Feng." He admired Zhong Gang a little. He was careful. This kind of person usually lived a more comfortable life and lived a longer life. Zhong Gang obviously wouldn't really call him that. He said, "I'll call you Brother Lei." "Hee, Brother Lei, since we know each other, I believe you have just arrived here." "Hee, can I invite you to be my guest?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's call it a day. I'll visit you tomorrow." Zhong Gang smiled and nodded. "All right, see you tomorrow." He no longer insisted. He was very satisfied that the other party agreed. He believed that with his own methods, he should be able to form a relationship with the other party. It was always better to have one more friend than one more enemy. This had always been his principle. This was a place where no one cared about anything. No power came here. He was able to stand here not because of his martial strength, but because of his social skills. Lei Xingfeng held Zhou Xian's hand and returned to the boat with Zhou Tong. Back on the boat, Zhou Xian finally became lively. What happened just now made him very scared. He said, "Brother Lei, why did he hit me?" This question had always been in his heart. He didn't dare to ask Tian Dabin. When he returned to the boat, he finally couldn't help but ask Lei Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng touched Zhou Xian's head and said, "Little Xian, forget it. Don't think about it." Zhou Xian was still young and quickly threw it aside. He said, "All right." Zhang Laoda had already returned. Uncle Zhou began to tidy up the leftovers on the boat. Lei Xingfeng sat down again. Uncle Zhou tidied up and also sat down. He said, "Afeng, thank you." He now knew that he had saved an incredible youth. His expression became slightly cautious. He was different from Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian was only a child and didn't know the complexity of this world. He was an adult and of course knew the status of a Luan master. He also understood why Lei Xingfeng didn't mind taking out the golden hoop. Lei Xingfeng laughed. "Uncle Zhou, you don't have to be polite with me. Since you saved me, we are family. There's no need to thank me. No matter what, I won't let others bully little Xian." As a normal person, Zhou Xian had a natural fear of Lewin masters. On the contrary, he was not as natural as Zhou Xian. Lei Xingfeng also had no choice. Since his identity as a Lewin master was exposed, he let it go. He originally didn't plan to hide his identity as a Lewin master, but he also didn't want to show off that he was a Lewin master. The night was silent. The next morning, Zhonggung had already sent his disciple over. Chapter 88. Zhonggung's eldest disciple, Wu Zhen, 100 Lewin master, almost able to advance to 1,000 Lewin master. He was Zhonggung's proudest disciple, only 28 years old today, with the hope of breaking through to 1,000 Lewin master at 30 years old. Reaching 1,000 Lewin master at this age also meant that in this lifetime he had a high chance of stepping into the mill wheel master realm. A mill wheel master in a remote place could definitely be called a tyrant. Wu Zhen and his master discussed for half the night yesterday, and the only conclusion they came up with was to try their best to get on good terms with the other party. With Lei Xingfeng, this kind of youth, as long as they didn't anger him, he shouldn't harm them. And what made them feel most at ease was that this kind of genius would definitely not stay in this place for a long time. This place should only be his temporary residence. In other words, he wouldn't be a threat to their local power. Therefore, Wu Zhen came early in the morning to invite him. Lei Xingfeng didn't refuse, and brought Zhou Xian along. As for Uncle Zhou Tong, he wasn't willing to go. For an honest person to socialize with others, it was a difficult thing. The reason why he brought Zhou Xian along was because Lei Xingfeng had his own thoughts. He knew that he couldn't stay here for long, and letting Zhou Xian get to know Zhonggung, this kind of powerful local snake, would be beneficial for Zhou Xian's future development. Following the pier, they returned to the market. The early morning water market was extremely beautiful, with a light mist. A few water birds leisurely flew by, and the soft sound of water. All the houses seemed to be floating on the water. The wooden streets already had many people setting up stalls. All of them were small food stalls. Beside the wooden streets was a waterway, and small boats rowed past. After entering the market, the noise hit them straight in the face. Wu Zhen laughed. This market is the most lively place near the water. Other places rarely have so many people gathered together to live. When the rainy season comes, there will be even more people. Lei Xingfeng said, "Rainy season?" Wu Zhen said, "Yes, the rainy season is not suitable for fishing far away. The fishermen will gather here, especially in the 2 months when the rain is the heaviest. At that time, almost all the fishermen will come back to avoid the storm." Lei Xingfeng was not very familiar with the local climate. He used to live in the mountains where there was a warm season and a cold season. Unlike here, there were also 2 seasons, the rainy season and the dry season. During the dry season, large amounts of land would appear. During the rainy season, the land would be filled with water. The land that was previously exposed would be submerged again, forming large swamps and lakes. Therefore, the locals were fishermen and did not live on land. Along the way, the 3 of them soon arrived at the residential area behind the market, which was filled with floating wooden houses. Wu Zhen whistled, and a small boat came over. A sturdy fisherman said, "Young master." After greeting them, he stopped the boat and waited for the 3 people to board. The 3 of them boarded the boat and sat down. The fisherman said, "Sit tight." As he spoke, he used his strength to push the boat with the bamboo pole. Only then did he use the oars to paddle along the waterway. After a while, they came to an independent water yard. There was a large wooden platform. Zhou Xian shouted, "Brother Lei, look, the scaly crocodile is up there." On the platform, a huge scaly crocodile was already divided into several sections. Its skin was also cut open. A huge fish head was erected on the platform, and the teeth in its mouth were exposed. Each of them was the size of a palm and glowed with a faint white light, like jade. Zhou Xian was really curious. After getting on the platform, he ran over to take a look. Wu Zhen immediately ordered people to follow him, in case someone bumped into the child. He now knew that Lei Xingfeng was extraordinarily good to Zhou Xian. He ordered people to follow Zhou Xian, and he personally accompanied Lei Xingfeng into the room. Lei Xingfeng noticed that the rooms here were very exquisite. It was completely different from the houses in the market. The houses in the market were rough and simple, enough to meet the needs of living. However, the houses here were much more exquisite. There were carved doors and windows, and the roof was covered with glazed tiles. It was the same on the roof ridge. A string of wind chimes hung from the high eaves, making a crisp sound with the breeze. The huge pillars made of logs were carved with all kinds of aquatic beasts. The planks on the floor were extremely thick. When one stepped on them, one would know that it was completely different from the planks on the streets of the market. The planks on the streets of the market would make creaking sounds when one stepped on them. However, there was no sound at all here. One could imagine how much material was used. With Zhonggung's strength, in a small place like this, he would definitely be a rich man. There were carved railings and painted rafters, exquisite carpets, and light muslin fluttering in the wind. In the corners of the corridor, there were all kinds of green plants and flowers. There were many ordinary servants. When they saw Wu Zhen, they immediately saluted and called him young master. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but sigh. He was a mill-wheel master, but he had never been treated like this. Before he started cultivating, he even had to worry about 3 meals. After he started cultivating, he had to fight nonstop. He didn't know how much more experience he had than this young master. However, when it came to the quality of life, he couldn't compare to Wu Zhen. The largest house was in the middle of the courtyard. After passing through several corridors, they arrived at the central house. It was a large house with open walls. Due to the warm climate here, whether it was the rainy season or the dry season, the climate was very warm. Therefore, many rich people's rooms were open on all 4 sides. They only used light muslin to prevent mosquitoes from invading. This room was more than 300 square meters. There were only 10 or so huge pillars supporting it, and a large amount of green plants were placed around it. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but praise. It's a very good building. He was also someone who had seen a lot. Although this building was unusually beautiful, his expression was very indifferent. Wu Zhen nodded to himself. Only someone who had seen a lot would have such an expression. He had seen many local rich people. When they entered this place, they were all stunned. Zhonggung came out to greet them. He smiled and said, "Welcome." "Ha! It's a little simple," he said politely. Lei Xingfeng said, "It's already very good." Behind Zhonggung was Han Xiaobao. As for Tian Dabin, he didn't even appear. Yesterday, Tian Dabin's performance had disappointed him. If not for the fact that the Tian family had a lot of influence in this place, he would have immediately chased this guy away. The 4 of them sat down. A servant served breakfast. Lei Xingfeng said, "Bring some to my little brother." Zhonggung ordered. Immediately, a servant went to the platform to serve Zhou Xian breakfast. Breakfast was very sumptuous. There was rice, porridge, all kinds of fried fish, and many pickled vegetables. Lei Xingfeng didn't recognize many of them. They were all local specialties. The taste was quite good. He was very satisfied with this meal. After breakfast, Zhonggung began to probe Lei Xingfeng. He hoped to know which sect Lei Xingfeng was from and why he came to this remote place. Lei Xingfeng obviously wouldn't tell the truth. He simply said that it was the sect's request. He came here to train for a period of time. There was no special purpose. Although Zhonggung was skeptical, he was relieved. He could see that Lei Xingfeng didn't have any bad intentions. Disciples going out to train was something that all sects did. Any sect's disciples would go out to train. There were all kinds of reasons and all kinds of strange training. He didn't doubt this at all. Han Xiaobao didn't say anything. She looked curiously at Lei Xingfeng. She couldn't understand how such a young person could cultivate better than her master. Mill master, that was an extremely powerful existence. Until now, she had only seen one mill master. He was at least 70 or 80 years old. He was really arrogant. She didn't expect that a youth could cultivate to become a mill master. She really didn't know how this person cultivated. Zhonggung said, "Brother Lei, since you came here to train, you can stay here in the future. It's more comfortable than staying on the ship." Lei Xingfeng flatly refused. He didn't want to stay here. It was inconvenient for him to cultivate. He said, "There's no need. I'll stay on the ship. However, I have something to trouble Mr. Zhong." Zhonggung said, "Please say it. As long as I can help, there will be no problem." Lei Xingfeng said, "I need a boat. Yes, I can pay for it." He considered that if the rainy season came, he would need to go out to train. Thunderstorms were the golden season for him to train. He needed to quickly improve his strength here. This meant that he had to go out alone. He couldn't trouble Uncle Zhou. Moreover, it was very dangerous to go out in the rain, especially during thunderstorms. Uncle Zhou was an ordinary person. He couldn't withstand lightning. Zhonggung said in surprise, "You want to buy a boat?" No problem. I have one here. I'll give it to you." "Yes, do you need a servant?" Lei Xingfeng said, "No need to give it to me. I'll buy it. I don't need a servant." Zhonggung said with a smile, "It's just a boat. You really don't need to buy it. Hee, boats aren't worth much here." Xian Feng thought for a while and decided to let it go. To him, a small boat was nothing. He wasn't a normal person. He nodded. "All right, then I'll thank you." Thanking was a must. Zhonggung smiled. He was very satisfied with Lei Xingfeng's attitude. He immediately ordered his subordinates to prepare a good boat. After talking with Zhonggung, Lei Xingfeng got a lot of information. This was something he couldn't get from Uncle Zhou. This place was indeed very remote. It was a small corner of Wanxi continent. It was said that after walking for half a year, one could reach Barbarian Gathering Continent. That was where Lei Xingfeng came from. And from here to the center of Wanxi continent, it was at least a decade away. Of course, if a practitioner used the ancient Luan Channel, it wouldn't take that long. Compared to Barbarian Gathering Continent, Wanxi continent was much more lively. Not only were there more cities, there were also more practitioners. Even if it was a remote place, there were still many practitioners. But this world was too big. In a small place, even if there were practitioners, there wouldn't be many of them, and their levels would be relatively low. A Wan Luan sure, or even 1,000 Luan master would be enough to control a place. Many practitioners who had no hope of advancing would choose to return to their hometowns or find a remote place to become a local tycoon. Occupying a place was enough to develop a small family. Zhonggung said, "Brother Lei, are you free these few days?" Lei Xingfeng said, "What's up?" Zhonggung smiled. "Yes, it's a good thing." Chapter 89. Lei Xingfeng asked, "What's the good news?" Zhonggung said, "Fishing and hunting." Lei Xingfeng came from the mountains. In this life, he knew how to hunt, but he definitely did not know how to fish. Even swimming was a skill that he brought from his previous life. His swimming standard in his previous life was extremely high. In this life, no matter if it was strength or endurance, they were all unimaginable. He was sure that a 100-meter dash in the water would definitely be faster than the 100-meter dash world champion in his previous life. According to his estimation, 100 meters in the water would take at most 5 to 6 seconds to cover 100 meters in the water. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng was not afraid of water. He even had a sense of intimacy towards water. In his previous life, he grew up by the sea. However, the lake here was not small either. The difference between the lake and the sea was that the water was fresh water and not as deep as the sea. However, the dangers here were not small either. For example, there were all sorts of strange local fish monsters and ferocious underwater creatures. Fishing and hunting was not to catch ordinary fish, but to hunt those ferocious fish monsters. It was the same as hunting in the mountains. Lei Xingfeng obviously wanted to see what fishing and hunting was. He said, "Okay, how many people are going?" Zhonggung said, "About 10 people, some boatmen and servants, about 10 boats." Lei Xingfeng said, "Are we hunting the scaly crocodile fish?" Zhonggung laughed. "Ha! Did you see the scaly crocodile fish we caught?" "No, we are hunting scaly crocodile to make bait." Lei Xingfeng's eyes lit up. The scaly crocodile fish was only bait. One could imagine how powerful the prey was. He said, "What is it?" "Star Lake python." Zhonggung's face gradually became serious. He said, "Star Lake python." Lei Xingfeng was stunned. Of course, he knew about the star python. It was a legendary creature. When did a star lake python appear? He said, "Star lake python is a type of star python, or is it related to the star python?" Zhonggung said it is not directly related to the real star python, nor is it a type of star python. However, there is a legend that the star lake python has a trace of the star python's bloodline. Therefore, the star lake python is extremely precious, and its body is a treasure that we cultivators need. This was a type of creature that Lei Xingfeng had never heard of before, nor had he seen it in any records. Furthermore, it was a creature from the lake, and it was even related to the star lake python. This made him curious, and he asked, "Where can I find the star lake python?" Zhonggung said, "If we go by boat, it will take half a month. The return trip will take a month. Of course, if we want to hunt the star lake python, it will take another month. After 2 months, no matter if we can hunt the star lake python or not, we will have to come back. The rainy season is coming." Wu Zhen interrupted, because there will be a large amount of thunderstorms during the rainy season, and the star lake python has a trace of the natural lightning attribute. During that time, even if we see the star lake python, we will not be able to defeat it. The reason why we hunt before the rainy season is because the star lake python is at its weakest. This is also the time where we have the highest chance of catching it. Of course, if the bait is not good enough, it will not be enough to lure it out. Zhonggung said, "I have already tried for 4 years. Every year, 2 months before the rainy season, I will hunt the star lake python. But I have not succeeded even once." Lei Xingfeng said, "Is it that hard to catch it?" Zhonggung said, "Not only is it hard to catch, this thing is too cunning. It is also very difficult to break through its defense. Originally, we invited a mill wheel engineer, but the news came last night that he was busy and could not come. So I thought of you." Lei Xingfeng joked, "Oh, so I was a candidate. But I promised you that no matter what, I will go and see the Star Lake python. Even if you did not invite me, as long as I know the news, I will go and take a look. It is too rare." Zhonggung's face was full of smiles. That's good. We will prepare to leave tomorrow. How about you stay here today?" Lei Xingfeng nodded. "No problem, but I have to go back and send little Xian back." Zhonggung said straightforwardly, "Okay, I will send someone to send you back." He then gave a few instructions to the servants beside him. Lei Xingfeng brought Zhou Xian back. Before boarding the ship, a few servants carried a lot of rice and various goods. Among them were many things that fishermen needed. These things were not worth much to Zhonggang, but to Zhou Tong, they were a large fortune. Lei Xingfeng did not decline, and did not need to decline. This was a kind of good intention, and also a way to make friends. He nodded and accepted it, and quickly arrived at the dock. Zhou Tong had been waiting at the bow of the ship. He was worried about Zhou Xian, and also worried about Lei Xingfeng. When he saw the two appear at the dock, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he saw a group of Zhonggang's servants, carrying a load, come to the front of the ship. A lot of rice, salt, cloth, and some daily necessities were placed on the dock. The servants bowed and left. Only one servant was waiting for Lei Xingfeng to return to Zhonggang's house. Lei Xingfeng called out to Zhou Tong, Zhou Xian, and Zhou Tong moved the things on the dock onto the ship. The surrounding fishermen showed envious expressions. Zhang Laoda, who was on the side of the ship, smiled and said, "Boss Zhou, you are rich." His tone was full of envy. Zhou Tong was also very happy. The rainy season was coming. With these things, he could rest for a period of time. He did not need to rush out to fish. It was always good to be lazy. Zhou Xian was even happier. With so much to eat, this year's rainy season would be much better. However, the rice in the cabin was a bit too much, and the whole boat sank half a foot. Lei Xingfeng explained that he was going out, but did not mention fishing. For ordinary people, this was too far away. Zhou Tong said, "Feng, are you still coming back?" Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Coming back? Why wouldn't I come back? Hee, I just have some matters to attend to with Zhonggang. I will be back in 2 months. At that time, it will be the rainy season. Maybe I will wait until the rainy season ends before I leave." Zhou Tong now knew that Lei Xingfeng was a Luan master. He always had a sense of reverence towards Luan masters. The next morning, Lei Xingfeng followed Zhonggang's fleet and set off. There were 11 boats. Among them, 3 were large wooden boats and 8 were ordinary fishing boats. Among the 3 large boats, one of the wooden boats was wrapped in thick fish skin. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Is this the skin of the scaly crocodile fish?" Wu Zhen said, "Yes, we only hunted a few scaly crocodile fish. All of the skin was used to wrap this boat. The scaly crocodile fish and the star lake python are natural enemies. As long as the star lake python notices the scent of the scaly crocodile fish, it will not hide no matter what, and will definitely come out to fight. That will be our chance." Lei Xingfeng sighed. This world did not lack people with outstanding intelligence. To be able to understand the temperament of the opponent and then take action against it, he felt that it was very amazing. Zhonggang said, "This is the 4th time. The first time, we didn't even see the star lake python. The second time, we did see it because we used the scaly crocodile fish. However, we couldn't beat it and let it escape. It even killed many of our people. The third time, we didn't see it. This time, we prepared well. Although we didn't have a mill-wheel master, we prepared a steel crossbow. Unfortunately, after wandering around for a month, the star lake python did not appear." Wu Zhen laughed. "This time, not only do we have a steel crossbow, we also have a mill-wheel master. We should be able to succeed." Zhonggang laughed bitterly and said, "If we don't succeed again, I don't want to go for the 5th time. It's too tiring and exhausting. If we succeed, then it's okay. If we fail again, then it's very depressing." Wu Zhen said, "Master, actually our luck is already not bad. With the strength of a mill-wheel master, our chances of success are very high." Han Xiaobao silently followed Zhonggang. She didn't like to talk much. She was also a little curious about Lei Xingfeng. a young man could actually cultivate to the level of a mill wheel master. This was really unexpected. One must know that her senior brother had cultivated for so long and was only 100 Lewin master. She originally thought that her senior brother was already very strong. But now, it seems that Lei Xingfeng was even stronger than her master. Towards this kind of talented young man, Han Xiaobao was a little fearful, so she spoke even less. Tian Dabing also came, but he didn't dare to board this big boat. Instead, he boarded another big boat. After all, there were too few people, and he needed to share some of the responsibilities. Then there were a few more trained, ordinary people. They were proficient in the water and were strong fishermen who spent a lot of time in the water. The 11 boats quickly moved across the water. The driving force of the boats was the oars at the back of the boats and the sails. If there was no wind, the speed of the boats would be very annoying. Lei Xingfeng, Zhong Geng, and Wu Zhen sat at the front of the boat. Han Xiaobao went back to the cabin alone. There was also a slightly older fisherman sitting at the front of the boat. He lit a charcoal stove and was boiling water. Zhong Geng and the other two sat cross-legged. In front of them was a small square table. It was a very small square table. On top of it was a plate of dried fish, a plate of fried peanuts, a plate of dried fruits, and some snacks like dried tofu. Other than peanuts, there were some local snacks. There was a pot of tea and a pot of strong wine. Lei Xingfeng drank tea, while Zhong Geng and Wu Zhen drank wine. Eating snacks and drinking strong wine, Zhong Geng said, "Brother Lei, can I ask you which sect are you from?" He finally couldn't help but ask. Lei Xingfeng drank tea. After a while, he said, "This tea is not bad." "Haha, why is there tea here?" He purposely didn't answer. It wasn't that he didn't want to answer, but that he didn't know how to answer. Zhong Geng secretly sighed. He knew that Lei Xingfeng didn't want to say. He said, "This tea was brought by the trading fleet." "Ha, it's very expensive. It's not something ordinary people can drink. I used to like drinking tea, but later I liked drinking strong wine. There's a lot of tea stored at home. If you like it, I'll get someone to give it to you when we go back." Lei Xingfeng said, "Thank you." He suddenly tilted his head to listen and said, "Shoo, don't talk, what's that sound?" There was a rustling sound. Chapter 90. Zhong Geng stood up and said, "Damn it, why would we encounter a school of shuttle spear fish here?" Wu Zhen shouted, "Prepare the scaly crocodile's blood. Hurry up." Lei Xingfeng stood up and walked to the side of the boat. The wooden boats here were all square and had a shallow draft. He squinted his eyes and saw a few silver spots in the distance. He asked, "What is a shuttle spear fish? Is it dangerous?" Wu Zhen said, "It's not dangerous, but it will damage the deck. This kind of fish is very fast. If the wooden boat happens to be on its route, then it will be fun. You will know when you see it." Zhong Geng said, "We have two dangerous fish here. One of them is the shuttle spear fish, and the other is the hunting knife fish. The shuttle spear fish is not only dangerous to people, but also to wooden boats." Wu Zhen said, "All boats dump the scaly crocodile's blood." The scaly crocodile was an overlord fish in the lake, so its blood had a deterrent effect. It made the fish mistakenly think that there was an injured, scaly crocodile. It must be known that an injured, scaly crocodile was very dangerous. Any fish that encountered an injured, scaly crocodile would instinctively escape. The shuttle spearfish was no exception. They were very sensitive. Seeing that the school of fish that were about to hit the wooden boat, they immediately changed their direction. Even so, there were still a few shuttle spearfish that hit the side of the boat. The sound was continuous. Lei Xingfeng saw the fish heads sticking out one by one, embedded in the side of the boat. Immediately, The fisherman went up to catch the shuttle spear fish and then used wooden corks to fill the holes in the deck. About 10 shuttle spear fish were nailed to the side of the boat. After taking them down, they were thrown on the deck. Lei Xingfeng saw the shuttle spear fish clearly. The fish was 2 feet long and as thick as an adult's arm. Its head was a bone spike, like a thick and short snake. Lei Xingfeng said, "So ugly." Zhong Gung smiled and said, "Whether it is the shuttle spear fish or the hunting blade fish, they are one of the best fish. The taste is extremely wonderful. There is a special net to catch shuttle spear fish. Hee, as long as you block their path, you can catch a lot." Wu Zhen added, "It's not easy to catch them. The speed of the shuttle spear fish is extremely fast. It's impossible to catch them. Only by blocking the front of the school of fish can it be possible to cast the net." The old fisherman who was boiling water smiled and said, "Young master, that depends on luck. No one will specifically catch shuttle spear fish. They will only cast the net when they encounter one. More often than not, when they see a shuttle spear fish, they will immediately turn the boat around and move to the side to avoid the shuttle spear fish. If a group of shuttle spear fish hit the side of the boat, you won't even have time to plug the hole, and the boat will sink." Lei Xingfeng asked, "What kind of fish is the hunting knife fish? Why is it dangerous?" The old fisherman smiled and said, "This thing also comes in groups, but there are more of them than the barracuda. They are everywhere. I'll catch one for you." Lei Xingfeng was surprised and said, "You can catch a hunting knife fish?" The old fisherman said, "That's easy. Most of the hunting knife fish come in groups. There are also many hunting knife fish that move alone. Wait a moment." He returned to the cabin and soon came back with the fishing rod. He put the bait on the hook and immediately cast the bait. In less than a minute, the old fisherman quickly pulled the rod and said, "It looks like a big fish." In this lake, there were countless kinds of fish, and the density was beyond Lei Xingfeng's imagination. Because the area was vast, the lake basically occupied the ground, and there were very few people. The fish here were almost unaffected by human life. They bred in large numbers, and the fishing rod was almost never empty. If one went down, there would be a harvest. Very quickly, the fish was dragged to the side of the boat. Wu Zhen picked up a net and caught the fish in one go. This fish was almost a meter long. Its body was as flat as a knife. It had a triangular head, a big mouth, a black back, and a silver belly. From the gills to the tail, there was a red line of blood. This thing was like an enlarged knife. The old fisherman grabbed the gills and used force to open the fish's mouth and said, "Hunting knife fish, other than its body being like a knife, the teeth in its mouth are mainly like knives. You see, don't they look like knives? If this guy bites, it will definitely cut off a piece of meat. If a group of hunting knife fish attacks you, unless you can quickly leave the water, in less than a minute, you will be left with only a skeleton. If there is a big hunting knife fish, like this one," the old fisherman pointed at the hunting knife fish in his hand and laughed, "even the bones will be bitten to pieces." Wu Zhen said, "And even if we 100 Luan masters are underwater, we would not dare to provoke the hunting knife fish. This thing is very vengeful if we don't attack it, and it is not hungry. It is not a big threat to humans." Lei Xingfeng thought, "Good guy, this is a standard piranha fish." Zhong Gung laughed, "This is not very useful to Luan masters. We are not afraid of this kind of fish. 1,000 Luan masters have Lunli armor. The hunting knife fish will not be able to bite through this kind of defense." Wu Zhen said, "Master, I am 100 Luan master, but I don't have Lunli armor. Sigh." He could not help but sigh. This young man is already a mill wheel master. This really made people want to die. His heart was filled with all kinds of envy and jealousy. Lei Xingfeng, of course, could hear the envy in Wu Zhen's voice. He said, 100 Luan Master to 1,000 Luan Master is actually not that hard. I see that you are about to reach it. As long as you roll your wheels like a pearl and cycle, you will reach your goal very quickly. He gave a few more hints and then stopped talking. Practitioners without a sect, but those who relied on their masters to pass down their skills, were often very difficult. Sometimes they would be stuck at a threshold, but it was this threshold that was very difficult to step over. It required a very long time of training until the Lunli reached a level where it could not be increased anymore. Only then would they be able to forcefully break through. During this period of time, not only would they waste time and energy, it would also delay their advancement. Wu Zhen's eyes were wide open. He never thought that Lei Xingfeng would say something like this. This was a secret training method. Even Zhong Gung's eyes were wide open. However, he quickly reacted. The training method that they viewed as a treasure was nothing to the disciples of the big sections. A few simple words would be enough to guide them. He had been stuck at the Wanluan Shi realm for a very long time and had been unable to break through. This had always been a sore point for him. This kind of thing could not be modest. Zhong Gung immediately asked, "Brother Lei, no, Mr. Lei, look at me, look at me." Lei Xingfeng could not help but laugh. His heart was slightly moved. Actually, he knew that any type of training would have its own characteristics. However, many key points of training were the same. This meant that in the future, he did not have to limit himself to the lightning type. Other training methods would also be enlightening for him. Rolling pearls like wheels, round pearls like jade. Zhong Gung immediately sat down. He carefully pondered. Wu Zhen did the same. Only the old fisherman was confused. Lei Xingfeng came to his side and said, "Uncle, can you handle these fish and cook a few dishes? I also want to try the pike fish and hunting knife fish." The old fisherman was shocked and said, "I don't dare to call myself uncle. Young master, just call me old Tian. I was sent to Master Zhong's house by the Tian family." Lei Xingfeng did not mind and said, "And old Tian, I know that you all have a few unique skills to cook fish. How about it?" Old Tian was flattered and said, Okay, no problem. As long as young master doesn't mind, I'll go prepare it." He hurriedly carried the wooden bucket and walked into the cabin. In just 10 minutes, Wu Zhen was the first to break through. Following closely behind, Zhong Gung also broke through. 1,000 Luan Master and a mill wheel master. The two were so surprised that they did not know what to do. Zhong Gung was the first to express his feelings. "Mr. Lei, you are my Zhong Gung's benefactor. I will be grateful to you for the rest of my life." Wanluan Shi and Mill Wheel Master were two completely different concepts. Their strength would increase by a large margin. The nature of their Lunli would also increase. Even their lifespan would increase. Their future development would also be different. How could Zhong Gung not be grateful? Wu Zhen was also ecstatic. Once he became 1,000 Luan Master and condensed a Lunli armor, his strength would also increase by a large margin. The difference between 100 Luan and 1,000 Luan was at least 10 times. This was just the beginning. When he trained up to 9,900 Lunli and above, the difference would be even greater. Lei Xingfeng laughed and said, "You're welcome. This is just a small trick." Zhong Gung sighed and said, "It's just a little trick for you, but for us, it's an insurmountable obstacle. If you didn't give us some pointers, we would have continued to delay. Unfortunately, I'm too old to join any of the major cultivation sections." After this guidance, Zhong Gung respected Lei Xingfeng even more. Practitioners rarely gave guidance to outsiders. Not to say that they were selfish, but to take the initiative to give guidance to outsiders was something unimaginable. Wu Zhen thanked him again and again. This advancement was even more beneficial for him. The younger he was, the more potential he had. He was in his 20s and not yet 30. If he became a Wan Luan Shi at 40 and a mill wheel master before 60 and condensed a true body at 80, he could live for another 40 years. 40 years, if his luck was good, he could condense his second true ring body. At that time, it would be completely different. Of course, this kind of advancement speed was completely unacceptable to Lei Xingfeng. With his talent and potential, as well as his strong background and resources, he would advance faster than these practitioners and reach a higher peak. Cultivation was like this. The faster one cultivated, the stronger one was, the more benefits there would be. Wu Zhen spent 10 years to become 1,000 Luan master, but Lei Xingfeng didn't even take a year to become 1,000 Luan master. He reached it in 1 or 2 months. The two couldn't be compared at all. This was the difference between geniuses and normal geniuses. This was also why those high-level practitioners wouldn't let go of geniuses. 10 days later, the fleet arrived at their destination, Flask Bay. The west side was a shallow beach with large amounts of trees. The east side was a reed swamp. The south side was an endless lake. The north side had an extremely rare stone mountain protruding out of the water. The fleet stopped at the side of the stone mountain. There was a very small piece of land here. This piece of land would be flooded during the rainy season and exposed during the dry season. The trees on this piece of land had already been chopped down. A wooden shed was built at the side of the water, and there was also a simple dock. Zhong Gung explained, "This place a few months ago, I sent people here to set up a camp." He felt a little proud. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.